This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. We've got a banger of a show today for you, folks. Mike McIntyre is going to join us for the latest on the Winnipeg Jets. Jets with a late one tonight, 9:30 p.m. in San Jose against Macklin Celebrini and the upstart Sharks. Team just finishing up their optional morning skate today. No real clarity as to if there's any lineup changes or lines, but Connor Hellebuck is getting the start, which would mean, in all likelihood, Eric Comrie gets the Ducks tomorrow night in the second of these back-to-backs. We're going to hear from Coach Scott Arniel in just a minute as the team gets ready to take on the San Jose Sharks. And then before Mike joins us, we've got a couple of clips that you're definitely going to want to hear about being captains from former Jet captains Blake Wheeler and Andrew Ladd. I haven't heard this yet. Elliot Friedman just tweeted out about it. Remis has grabbed a couple clips. I'm very excited to hear this, and I think you will be quite interested too. One quick thing with the late game tonight, don't forget, it is another edition of the Lock Shop Winnipeg Sports Talk, Edmonton Sports Talk Poker Tourney over at Coolbet. We get going at 9 p.m. tonight. If you would like to join us, we'd love to have you. You've had so much fun doing these for the last few months, and we'll do it again. A little poker and hockey combo tonight. What could be better? Download, or just go to coolbet.com, download the poker app. You'll see it. And then go into tournaments and just click on the little magnifying glass, put in lock. You'll see Lock Shop Poker Open. Get in there on that. There's a $100 bounty on my head, $100 bounty on Dustin Nielsen's head. And we should maybe put a bounty on Nick Lyman's head of Top Line Media, who won the whole thing last month. Hopefully he'll be back to defend the belt. But tonight, 9 p.m., let's do it. Looking forward to seeing you then. Just before we bring in Michael Remis, a huge shout out to all of the sponsors that make this show happen every day. Of course, Coolbet, Princess Auto, fansfirst.ca, Rollies Transfer, Hockey Canada and Manitoba, and of course the ultimate 50-50 draw. We'll tell you about that a little later on. Rollies Transfer, Manitoba Battery, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, the Winnipeg Jets, Little Brown Jug, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports, and we'll get to a why not question of the day for Not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray. Remo, what's up?
Hey, I'm just, getting over what I just listened to with this Andrew Ladd, Blake Wheeler podcast, but also very fired up about tonight's game. Jets, Sharks, late start. Love it. As I've said, tuck in the wife and kids and get to watch it solo. But tonight, yes, Lock Shop Poker Series. I got to get back on the horse. I've had a bad showing the last couple since getting second in the first ever one. So great time. And yeah, holidays season, we got the big game Saturday against the Wild, trying to figure out what I'm going to do when my kids are off school, but while putting together some great shows here at Winnipeg Sports Talk. A lot of things happening, feeling good, ready for tonight's game.
Yeah, listen, the holidays are upon us. It's going to be a fun couple of weeks, but busy next few days for the Winnipeg Jets before we open presents next Wednesday. Back-to-back tonight and tomorrow in California. Back home for the WST game, Minnesota Wild on Saturday night. And then, of course, the 23rd, that weird 1 p.m. afternoon game on Monday against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Hey, speaking of Saturday, before we get into tonight's game, shout out to Dallas, who went in yesterday when we were talking about the Winnipeg Sports Talk night in our group in Section 316. He grabbed the last 2 tickets. Now, I did contact the Jets last night, and they have opened up a few more in Section 316. There was a couple foursomes and a couple threesomes available. So if you were waiting and then there were no tickets available, jump on them now. WinnipegJets.com/WST. Click on the Minnesota, get your tickets. It will include a beverage. You can come in there early, join us in the hangar bar outside 316. And we're undefeated so far this year. It is sort of a dual holiday party, if you will, for WSTers. So looking forward to seeing everyone that's got tickets already. But as of just about an hour ago, they added some more seats. So go to WinnipegJets.com/WST if you don't have tickets for Saturday's game and join us for what should be a good one. But Remo, as you mentioned, before we get to Saturday, a couple games on the road, and tonight, I'm really looking forward to this one tonight because, of course, we didn't get a chance to see Macklin Celebrini when the Jets and Sharks played earlier this season.
Yeah, I'm looking back at that game. It was so long ago, beginning of the year. They played in October, and the Jets really, put the screws to San Jose, winning 8-3. I think that was early on in the year. The San Jose got off to a terrible start, but they've really found their game. Macklin Celebrini was hurt. He's back. They're playing really well, although they did just make a trade, trading away their goalie, Mackenzie Blackwood, who is pretty good for them, Huss. And we'll be seeing him with Colorado later this year, but they're going with Georgiev is in net tonight, Huss. Didn't get the nickname Forgiev for no reason. We're looking at his goals against average and save percentage with Colorado. So we did, get the Forgiev experience in Game 1 of the first round of the playoffs earlier this year when he was with Colorado. We'll see how it goes. Connor Hellebuyck going to be starting the first game of the back-to-backs tonight. So I haven't seen too many other updates. Ken or Mike are not traveling. It's just Mitch Clinton there, and I'm just going by his updates on X, formerly known as Twitter.
Yes. Now, other big Jet news just before we hear from the coach. Congratulations to Kevin He, who today became the first ever Chinese-born player to sign an NHL contract. Of course, a 4th rounder last year, standout at training camp, has had an absolutely incredible Ontario Hockey League season. He joined us, last month to talk about it. He's now the captain of his club and signs a contract today. This is great news for the organization. Incredible news for a young man. I mean, there's no guarantees as a 4th-round pick you're going to get an NHL contract. But holy smokes, has he done the job this year for his club, Remis? And now he'll look to graduate to the professional ranks as a member of the Winnipeg Jets organization. Just a great story, a really great person, and a heck of a hockey player that is a very nice addition to the Winnipeg Jets cupboards.
Yeah, 3-year entry-level contract, an AAV of $975,000 in the NHL. Currently in his 3rd season with the Ice Dogs. He was named captain earlier this year, and yes, you had a great conversation with him. He's 2nd on the team. He's got 23 goals, 20 assists. That's 43 points in 29 games, and he was picked this year's draft. We were there in Vegas and chatted with him. 109th overall in the 4th round, and big news because he is the first Chinese-born player to sign a contract in the NHL. He was born there, moved to Canada at a young age, and I don't know if we really felt the impact at the time, but there was someone, he was someone from Chinese media there at the draft, following him and tracking him, and has got huge traction on our social media from people interested in his success. So he's having a great season with the Ice Dogs as he is the captain, and now he's got the ELC. So congratulations to Kevin He on his 3-year entry-level contract. That was big news. I'm seeing across, not just Winnipeg social medias, but on Barstool, Bar Down. Everyone's talking about this deal, and everyone in Niagara happy for him as well.
Yeah, listen, it is a great story. And yeah, you mentioned we were in Vegas, obviously covering everything the Jets were doing at the draft back in late June. And when we went up to kind of meet Kevin He for the first time, there were far more cameras around Kevin as a 4th-round pick than most of the other ones there. And, there was some real interest from Chinese media as to this young man who was becoming the first Chinese or the highest drafted Chinese-born player ever. It's one thing to get drafted. It's another thing to sign a National Hockey League contract, and he's been the first guy to do that. And I'll tell you what, Remis, I mean, just from an organizational standpoint, wouldn't it be something if Kevin He turns into, a good quality NHLer? What that might do for the Winnipeg Jets business-wise, I mean, opening up some doors to the billions of Chinese people, in China, of course, but also around the world. I think it's a real positive, and who knows? I mean, we've seen I'm not sure we'll get to Ohtani levels of media following Kevin He around, but I think just on a personal level, it is a great story for a young man that has had his path in a sport that is not at all associated with his birth country. And then there's, I think, a lot of ancillary things that might be great for the organization, for our community, if he can come in and make it happen. But the bottom line is the guy's just a hell of a player. Has earned the captaincy and has been an absolute standout this year for Niagara in the OHL. And this news, not only widely reported, very well received here in Winnipeg, as you would expect. And we wish him luck moving forward the rest of this year. And congratulations to Kevin He. All right, I do want to get to a couple of these clips from Blake Wheeler and Andrew Ladd. And we'll do that before Mike McIntyre, and we'll talk about it with Mike. But let's quickly hear from Scott Arniel. The team traveled with the moms out to San Jose yesterday, got on the ice with a couple days between games for a change. Here's Arnie on just having a break for 2 days and, of course, having the moms along with the squad.
No, it's kind of a foreign day for us, I guess, having these a couple of days in between. Got to travel out here, obviously, with the moms a little bit early to get settled, and they have a good practice today. So hopefully it makes us, because of the back-to-back, hopefully we're fresh for both games.
Dinner last night with all the moms, the sisters, the guests. I'm just curious if as you were kind of walking around the room, if you kind of started to see where people get their different personalities.
Yeah, there actually are a few. I won't name anybody, but you can see it. There's a lot of the similarities there, and but it's a special time. These guys, obviously the dads were out last year, and now to have the sisters and moms, and it's a special time for them, and it's memories that not only for the players but also for the mothers there. It's special times.
Yeah, and of course the Jets social media did a great job as the fellas left onto the bird to head down to California. Pictures of just about all the players, I believe, with their moms. Listen, the moms are in the house. You better come up with 2 big games tonight and tomorrow while they're along with the trip.
Well, I was gonna say, wasn't the Jets' record last year on the dads mentors trip amazing? So I remember they put a couple together. Chuck Hellebuyck tweeting all the way through it. I don't know if there's any social media superstars on the team Chuck Hellebuyck, but maybe we'll get to know some of them if they show them on the broadcast.
Really?
Or through social media.
You to tell me that you were already following 4 of the moms on TikTok.
No, I don't.
Your research hasn't gone that deep?
Yeah, I don't know how I got tipped off to Chuck Hellebuyck. Maybe because he's got such a unique name. The algorithm was showing, but we'll see. They did show some of them on social media, and they've done a great job putting out all the content. They're all, in the jersey of, the person they're accompanying on the trip. So I'm sure it's an exciting time getting to go on the plane, and you'll get the full experience of finishing a game, getting on the plane. Not traveling too far, though. It's only San Jose to Anaheim. I can't imagine it's that far of a plane ride, because I remember Chuck telling us couldn't believe getting to a hotel last year at 2 a.m., getting the full experience. So that was great to have him on last year, and we'll see what the reviews are, and hopefully they can play well. 2 pretty good opponents. Jets big favorites tonight. I'm sure they will be tomorrow as well.
Yeah, well, best behavior for the boys with the moms on the trip, and hopefully best foot forward on the ice tonight. Good news, David Gustafsson is continue to come back from what happened last Tuesday against the Boston Bruins. He's been in the protocol. He was on the ice yesterday, as was Nikolai Ehlers. Here's an update from Arnie on those 2.
Yeah, it is. Obviously, he's still in the concussion protocol, but he's farther along. He got the bike yesterday, and now obviously he gets to get on the ice. We'll just kind of move him along here. No rush here. Don't want, obviously, with concussions, it's a tricky area, so just go day to day.
day-to-day for Nikolai as well as he moves into the regular?
Yeah, we're not. I mean, that was the first full practice with us today, and kind of we'll move forward here again. We'll just we'll talk about it and see where he's at with Mullet, and we'll see where we go. We'll talk tomorrow.
Yeah. Now, listen. I mean, we'll keep our ear to the ground throughout the afternoon to see whether there may be any lineup changes. I do think that if Ehlers was going to be in tonight, we probably would have seen a corresponding roster move, which has not happened yet. So I would expect the lineup to be the same, which would mean Nikita Chibrikov in with Perfetti and Nemetsnikov, and Ehlers taking one more day to potentially return. Could be a possibility for tomorrow. I guess we'll hear more from Coach Arneal later on. Listen, it has been such a busy run for the Winnipeg Jets through these last month plus. Adam Lowry talked about the benefits and glory of having 2 days off between games.
There's been a lot of strange things. It was like, being at home for a week was weird, having that homestand, and you're getting the 2 days. It's nice. Waking up this morning and realizing you don't have to get ready for a game is, it's good. It's a bit of a mental reset. November and the start of December was obviously a grind, but to have a day off and then you come out and we were able to have a good practice day, I think it's huge. Sometimes the limited practice time and those days in between games, you're just trying to rest as much as possible, and you miss out on some of the important things with hockey, and that's being sharp, the mental sharpness, the structure wise, and being able to work on that in practice today. Hopefully it helps for this road trip coming up.
How about the Bengals lid on the captain, Reem?
Okay, I remember now. He's been on this show, and he confessed to us. I thought it was Carson Palmer, but no, he's a big Andy Dalton guy, Adam Lowry. He's been on here talking about it. So, yes, he's rocking the white Bengals lid. I'm not a big white hat guy, nervous about them getting dirty, but if you think, you can pull it off, all the power to you, but there he is rocking the white. But yes, big Andy
Winnipeg
Dalton
Walter
guy.
In chat, I'm sure he's loving the fact that Adam Lowry, and Lowry, he's got a little bit of a red beard. I never really thought of him as a redhead, but maybe he had a little bit of a kinship with the Red Rifle Andy Dalton. And obviously Joe Burrow's pretty damn cool and a hell of a quarterback. Unfortunately, they just haven't won any games this year, or not enough at least to be in the playoffs. Although still technically alive. We're going to talk Vikings later on after that big win last night. 12-2 now for the Vikings, and this incredible story as Sam Darnold continues. Matt Coller from Purple Insider will join us a little bit later on. Of course, it's the Sharks tonight. Jets handled San Jose earlier this year. It was a big game for Cole Perfetti. But here's Adam Lowry on playing the Sharks and looking back at their past meeting.
When we played them, it was early in the season. They were missing a couple of guys that have come into their lineup and really, stepped right into the NHL and done a really good job. Celebrini's obviously a very exciting young player, and I think as a team, when you're young and there's not a lot of expectations, there's a lot of room for growth. But they've taken a step forward. They play hard, and you look at their record since we've played them. It's certainly improved, and they're a team a lot like Montreal in terms they're good off the rush. They can create there, and they have a lot of smaller skill forwards that like to make plays. So it's going to be important that we play a similar style to Montreal in terms of what we gave up. I thought we were really detailed in the neutral zone, really detailed off the rush, and you get to the front of the net. I think that's an area where we're still looking to improve upon, and it starts tomorrow night.
All right, so there's the captain, and where Chips McGee is talking about Kenny Anderson now from the Bengals. And Jay Miller, next goal, I'm expecting the Icky Shuffle. I would be here for it. Can you imagine the captain breaking out the Icky Shuffle after a goal? Maybe he'll get a chance to do that tonight. We will get to our Coolbet lines later on, in addition to talking about the poker tourney this evening. And I can tell you that after a breakout game earlier this season against the Sharks, I will be including Cole Perfetti to get a point in the WST parlay for tonight's game. But let's hear from Perfetti on going up against San Jose, who he had such a strong game against earlier this season.
Yeah, typically we play, they play us tough, and it's always a good game. Obviously this year, they got a lot of skill. They're young. They have a lot of firepower and a lot of guys that can, are shifty and can make plays. And, a couple of their young guys are playing really well right now, and they're playing well. So it's going to be a good game, I think. Like you said, it's always tough against these guys. They, it's we always have a tough time in this building, but I think with that 2-day break, like you said, we needed that, and we're feeling good going into it and coming off a nice win, so we're feeling good.
All right, so there's Cole Perfetti with Mom in tow. The puck drops tonight at 9:30 p.m. You can check the game on TSN. And, of course, hear Paul Edmonds and Mitch with the call over on 680 CJOB. Now, listen, we're going to get to these quick clips. Remo, just give us a quick background of what we are about to hear.
So I'm always on social media, and Elliot Friedman on X just put out, right before I'm about to get to the clips from yesterday, he says, want to recommend this podcast with Dan Leflar, Andrew Ladd, and Blake Wheeler. Listened to it last night. It's fantastic. About lessons learned, things they did right, things they did wrong. Brutally honest, really, really interesting stuff. A lot of it resonated with me. And I'm sure Jets fans would want to take the opportunity to hear from former captains Andrew Ladd and Blake Wheeler. And what this is this Dan Leflar. He's a performance coach, does mental health coaching. It's called the Beyond High Performance podcast. He's the managing partner of something called Novus Global Sport. So he chatted with Blake Wheeler and Andrew Ladd, who's an ambassador or a partner for this Novus, about Blake talked about what it takes to build trust in the locker room, staying resilient through the highs and lows while communicating with authenticity and authority. He talked about personal battles with anxiety, role of vulnerability in driving team success, and talked about the hard-earned lessons that shaped Blake Wheeler's careers and how he leads. Whether you're an athlete, a leader, or both, this episode is packed with powerful takeaways to elevate your mindset, performance, and impact. So I thought, Jets fans would find this interesting, so I started to grab through clips, and I couldn't listen to the whole thing, so I fast-forwarded to Blake Wheeler talking about losing the captaincy and how he felt about that. Get a chance for him to be open and honest, and he had talked very previously before this about going through panic attacks, and anxiety, which led him to finding this performance coach who's doing the podcast. And so I'll play the clip for you. Haven't heard this?
Yeah, no, this is the first for me as well.
So this is Blake Wheeler, his reaction to having the C removed on his jersey.
My first instinct was to take the bait with what you just, of being the victim. I just got screwed, all these different things. And because of the previous year and a half working together, I was able to slow all that down and just the question I asked myself, pretty quickly after all that happened was when my career is over with, when all this is said and done, my kids look back on this, what will I be proud of? When I look in the rearview mirror, how I handle this, that's going to dictate whether or not I'm proud of this moment or ashamed of it. You know what I mean? And were you ever a leader if you could only lead when times were good? Because you get named captain, there's this honeymoon phase. You're the best. Our team got really good. We were knocking on the door of being a Stanley Cup team. Everything was really good for a few years. I was man, this is maybe I am this great captain.
Leadership thing's so easy.
This isn't so hard. And I remember when it started kind of going the other way, and talking to him one day, and he was like, "You're finally welcome. You're finally a leader. You know what it's like now. This is leadership." So that always stood out to me. So I'm eternally grateful that you and I had that you came into my life when you did, and we went through all that stuff together, because when the most challenging moment of my career and life probably at that time happened, I was equipped with tools to handle it in a way that I could be proud of.
All right, so there's Blake Wheeler. We'll kind of get into this more maybe tonight and have some more for you. But again, you can check it out. We'll throw a link up, and Elliot Friedman's tweeted out. The second clip that we're going to play before we bring Mike McIntyre in is Andrew Ladd. And Reem, I guess this is Andrew Ladd's reaction to what happened with Blake here in Winnipeg at the end?
Yeah, so in that clip, Blake Wheeler talks about, I guess he had a difficult year, and, the year before having the C removed, he had worked with this performance coach he talked about having the tools, to deal with that. And then Andrew Ladd, who had, I guess, worked with him as well, talked about his reaction as a friend to Blake when he, and, a former captain of the Winnipeg Jets as well, to the C being removed. So I was just interested to hear what Ladd had to say. And here's that clip before we get to Mike.
Yeah, I think I was like knowing Blake and then knowing what he wanted for that organization, for the team, like understanding. I didn't know a whole lot about what he was going through, but obviously I knew he was working with you, and that was starting to shift for him of like, hey, understanding his impact on others and like growing. Like I knew he was working at it, so I was pissed off. Because I'm like, oh, like you've had this person in your organization who is actively working to like, hey, how do I become a better leader for this group? And then he didn't even get the chance to implement that. Blake, is that true? Did you not get a chance?
Well, I think that's not what Ladder meant, but
I know it's not.
You're being an asshole, Dan. But
yeah,
but yeah, the answer is like sort of what I said before. Like, do you need to have a letter on your sweater to show up?
Yeah, and like again, that's the easy thing to say. Like and we all know it's the right answer. It's the easy thing to say. It's so hard to do, and it's so different than any other industry in the entire world. Like if you're a CEO of a company and you're like, you don't get, oh, okay, now we're going to put you out as like a VP. Yeah, you're going to be a VP now. Like, no, you go somewhere else. So there's a certain level of like embarrassment and shame that you're putting someone through in that moment. That is, and I know other guys in the league have gone through the same thing. So you're not alone there. But like, it takes a certain amount of character to handle that situation properly. And so that's why I was like, watching you go through that, man, like I was proud of like, hey, how you handled that. And as a friend, I got to be pissed off for you behind the scenes.
All right. So there is former Jets captains, Blake Wheeler, and then that last clip was Andrew Ladd. And Remo, what was the podcast name again?
Yeah, so Elliot tweeted this out. I'm going to put a link in the description because it was an hour long. It's called, I don't even know what the name is called. It's on Novus Global on YouTube. The video titles How Captains Build Unbreakable Teams. It is the Beyond High Performance podcast with Dan Leffler. I'll put the YouTube, it's on YouTube and Apple. Elliot tweeted out. I will put the YouTube link in the description of this video if you want to listen to the whole thing. It's like an hour and 13 minutes. Like I didn't have enough time to listen to all of it.
No, listen, it sounds really interesting, and we'll definitely maybe have a little bit more from it tomorrow, depending on what comes out of it. Listen, we're going to see what Mike thinks about that and discuss all the other news around the Winnipeg Jets in just a minute. Don't forget, folks, you still got time to support grassroots hockey initiatives in town and win a big handful of cash with the ultimate World Junior 50-50 draw, the biggest power play yet put on by Hockey Canada. Now, it is a Hockey Canada initiative that happens around the World Juniors, but each provincial hockey organization is doing their own draw. So when you click on the link at hockeymanitoba.myshopify.com and buy your tickets, you'll be in the Manitoba pool. So there will be a Manitoba winner for every draw, and 50% of the proceeds go to support growing the game at grassroots level across Canada, across Manitoba, I should say. You got options for a single bullet, one ticket, all the way up for a great deal for 999 tickets. But again, what you need to know is that you can win a bunch of money, and the bottom line is the other 50 of the 50-50 draw is going to grassroots hockey initiatives, which is great to grow the game and continue it thriving here in Manitoba. So link in the description for that as well. If you're listening on the podcast, go to manitoba.myshopify.com and get your tickets now. Might be some nice stocking stuffers for family members because the first draw is on the 26th of December when the World Junior Hockey Championships begin. Listen, of course, Christmas is coming up, and then guess what? A week after that, we're into 2025. And if you and your family are on the move in 2025, talk to our friends at Rolly's Transfer about taking care of that next move. Rolly's Transfer, family owned and operated in Winnipeg for over 60 years, the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba. And as they're all around the province on a daily basis with their logistics business, it's flexible routes and timing for you and great rates on that next move with the white glove treatment that only Rolly's can provide. Go to Rollys.com, top right corner, you'll see the request an estimate link. Click on that, let them know when and where you're planning on moving and what you need to move. And the friendly staff of Rolly's will turn that around quickly, get you a great quote, and get you locked in to take as much of the stress out of that moving day as possible, as only Rolly's can. For your next move going into the new year, use our friends at Rolly's Transfer. Find out more, request an estimate today over at Rollys.com. It's getting cold again, folks, and we know January and February are coming up. This is a great time with the help of Manitoba Battery to give a Christmas gift that matters this year. Don't let your loved ones get stranded in the cold with a vehicle that won't start. Make sure they are equipped to handle whatever's thrown at them this winter with the NOCO 1000 amp booster pack for only $139.50. Or get them a set of 25-foot booster cables for just $65. Now, you might also want to treat yourself to a great deal and grab that ice fishing flasher battery you need or that sled battery that needs to be replaced. All for the best prices in the city, period, 12 months a year, beating the pants off the big box stores. Whether it's to you or your loved ones, let Manitoba Battery help you give a gift that matters this Christmas. Learn more at manitobabattery.com and pop down and see him, Logan Avenue, Dovercourt Drive, with 2 locations to serve you. And while we're talking about Christmas, gang, of course, the Black Friday sales are over. However, F Apparel has an amazing deal for those of you thinking about a gift card. If that guy on your Christmas list would love to up their menswear game this Christmas, get them an F Apparel gift card. And right now until Christmas, they've got a great deal. Any gift card of $100 or more will have 15% added to it. So you can get more bang for your buck right now with an F Apparel gift card. Pop by and see them, 190 Smith Street downtown, for the best in custom men's clothing, accessories, and more. And of course, that's EPHapparel.com online to take advantage of that offer as well. All right, let's welcome in Mike McIntyre from the Winnipeg Free Press. And Mike, great to have you on the program. Kind of figured we'd be talking about Sharks and Kevin He, but I know you popped in a little early. Kind of interesting stuff we just heard from Andrew Ladd and Blake Wheeler.
Very interesting. So let me just put the caveat out that what I just heard you play was actually the very first. I saw Elliot's tweet earlier today, and I bookmarked. As Remo pointed out, it's a lengthy listen. So I haven't had a chance yet to delve into it. I actually had a great chat just a short bit ago with Kevin He, fresh off signing that contract with the Jets. And then I was quickly putting that story together. So I am going to listen, and I'm very interested to hear it, obviously. Blake Wheeler is, a huge figure when you're talking about Jets 2.0. Clearly, his tenure ended, not on the best of terms. It never is when you buy a player out. That's a messy, complicated process. And I think messy and complicated would be a good way to sum up kind of the overall history / relationship between Blake Wheeler and the Jets, Wheeler and the fan base. A bit of a polarizing figure, probably more so towards the end of his tenure. But, just from what you played there, Huss, it looks like, number one, Blake Wheeler's in a very good place, physically, mentally. And it's fascinating to hear him now kind of reflect on what went down and, some sober second thoughts, if you will, about maybe some of the behind the scenes things that we don't see and hear and don't show up on stat sheets. He's a fascinating figure, and you'd love to see, I would anyways, and I think a lot of fans would like to see, like, you look at the way the Jets have honored Brian Little recently, and what Brian Little means to the organization. I think, I'd love to see something like that with Blake Wheeler eventually. Interesting, Huss. Now, maybe, again, I haven't delved into this. Has Blake Wheeler officially announced he's retired?
I don't believe so.
No. So let me say, he looks in great shape. I actually saw a picture of him. He attended the Tyler Myers 1000th game celebration. I think that was just a few weeks ago in Vancouver. And the first thing I noticed, it was like a full body picture of Blake Wheeler. I'm like, wow, he looks like he is ready to suit up. Now, he had that devastating broken leg last year, but he did work his way back eventually. And I think he only got in one more game in the playoffs, and then he was a scratch. But I am fascinated by the fact, because lots of times when guys, no one announces their retirement if they still have a contract and they're on LTIR or whatever. That's not the case with Blake Wheeler. He doesn't have a contract, but he hasn't announced his retirement. Is there a Zach Parise type situation where is he quietly working out? And
you're suggesting that the Jets could use a big-bodied winger that had been here before for a playoff run at some point, Mike?
Hey, I mean, there's probably worse ideas out there. I don't know if the Jets if that would be something that would happen, but you do wonder, like, is he keeping his doors open? I'd love to ask Blake Wheeler that. I don't know the answer. It would be the ultimate in load management, right? Like to be a veteran player with fresh legs who just signs kind of right at the trade deadline to join a team down the stretch run. Because one thing about Blake Wheeler, Huss, it's eaten him up. It looked like they had a great shot last year, right, of getting that Stanley Cup. I mean, the Rangers won the President's Trophy. Hey, maybe Blake Wheeler was the glue holding the Rangers together. Look how they've fallen apart this year.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll go that far. And certainly I think that the ship has sailed in Winnipeg. But to your point, I certainly would not rule it out. And listen, he knows Paul Maurice quite well. I'm not sure whether he's in the Twin Cities or down at his place in Florida. But you never know what'll happen with injuries, with what a team might be looking for a real depth piece that may play, that may not play. And, I think that you could make the argument that there still is some things that Blake Wheeler could offer an NHL team, down the stretch, depending on the situation. I certainly don't think that'll be here. What is interesting about that? And listen, I have some empathy for Blake because, I think that if you look at 2.0 players, people have different opinions of him as a person. He did do a ton of things in the community. He may have rubbed some people the wrong way while doing it, which happens, especially when you're in a position like that. But, it seemed like what they were trying to do and what they were talking about there in stripping of the captaincy was one part. I wouldn't say it went so swimmingly that they just continue through it because, of course, this team does not make a habit of buying out players very often.
No.
There was Mark Stewart, who was just done, and then there was Blake Wheeler, and there was a lot of money involved in it as well, and, of course, he ended up still going and playing. But, it is a complicated legacy here, but I think the more time goes by, we'll look back at Blake, and time heals all wounds. And listen, if you wanted to do a power poll, the most important players in Winnipeg Jets 2.0 history, I think at this point, and that might change certainly with Scheifele and certainly with Hellebuck moving forward, I think at the end, those two guys will be at the top, but I think you'd have a hard time not putting Blake Wheeler at number one right now based on 2011 right up until today.
Well, not to spoil my ballot, but I had a vote recently, Huss. The NHL's got a project where they're doing the sort of like an all
the quarter century team.
quarter century team right. And so the Jets, it's an interesting exercise, especially here in Winnipeg, because the parameters were, it's from the year 2000 to present. And so, of course, in Winnipeg, the history includes the Atlanta Thrashers and really 11 years of the Thrashers, because before they came to Winnipeg. But I will say Blake Wheeler not only was on my ballot, but was right near the top of my ballot when it came to forwards. And I think the results are going to be released. I'm not sure when the Jets are slated. I think it's like a day-by-day thing. They're going through individual teams in January, but there will be a day where the Jets roster is revealed.
Jan 10.
Jan 10, okay. So, yeah, I mean, we're going to see Blake Wheeler. I don't think it's a big surprise to say we'll see Blake Wheeler's name on that quarter century team. And you're right. I mean, this is a guy who he was the captain of the team at the time that it was at its highest peak. And, you know, the 2018 run to the Western Conference Final, at this point, that's the ultimate, that's the peak right now for the Jets. And clearly, like, his work ethic, the way he played, his ability to play through pain is not just legendary here in Winnipeg. I would suggest it's pretty legendary around the league, like what he played through. Who can forget finishing the game with a ruptured testicle? And sorry for folks.
And almost scoring the winner in overtime on a vintage Wheeler drive. I will never forget that. Listen, there's two things when I think of Blake Wheeler playing through things. The busted nut game against Boston.
And the gate.
The
right?
gate. And I was in Dallas for that game.
Oh.
Gary and I were on the road, and I'm in the press box watching this game. And it's at the end of the season. The Jets are not technically out of it, but they basically are. There was about 4 or 5 minutes left in the game when that happened. And I mean, honest to God, Mike, I saw that happen, and I thought he was impaled. Like, I was worried for the long-term health of Blake after that. And 2.5 minutes later, with the season on the line and down, he comes back out of the dressing room, gets out there. I could not believe my eyes. And, you know, as I said, I mean, you know, there were some personal battles that he had, and I think it'll be really interesting to hear him reflect on a lot of things afterwards. I think we've already had that somewhat, and I'm sure we'll get a little bit more on that in this interview. But you know, Blake did a lot for this team and this community, and you know, some people will hold grudges for a long time, but you know, I think it's smart. I mean, with whatever bad that some people have, there was so much good, and he will be there. I do hope you omitted all Thrashers, real Thrashers, from your voting.
One other quick Wheeler injury note. This would probably complete the hat trick, the two you mentioned clearly. And then the third would be last year in New York. I remember being in New York shortly after the Wheeler injury and talking to some of his Ranger teammates and a bunch of Jets players who had gone for dinner with Blake. They described that broken leg he suffered. Huss, like if he was a basketball player, there would have been people like vomiting at the sight of what that injury was. Like, we're talking like compound fracture. How about the fact Blake Wheeler actually got up and skated off on that leg, and his reasoning, as he told teammates past and present at the time, was that his kids were at the game and he didn't want his kids to see dad stretchered off the ice. Now, he was stretchered off, but only after he got off the ice and then collapsed in what must have just been absolute excruciating agony. So you're right. Like, those examples of Blake Wheeler, say what you want about maybe his people skills, and obviously at times he could be prickly with the media. You know, I personally, just speaking as someone who covered the team, I loved watching Blake Wheeler play hockey. And, you know, what he did kind of between the whistles, it was really second to none. So, yeah, I'm fascinated to listen to the whole episode. And obviously, Andrew Ladd was a huge part as well of Jets 2.0 history, first captain and all that. So sounds like a real fascinating and enlightening look into the heads of these two very important players.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I mean, there certainly will be a day. I mean, without a doubt, Blake Wheeler going into the Jets Hall of Fame. And it'll be interesting to see. I mean, is Ladd in there? I think Brian Little for sure will be there, being basically a career Winnipeg Jet, despite being, quote, traded to the Coyotes. And then, of course, there's Big Buff, who I'm sure will have a spot for him there at some point as well. Let's get on to, the news of the day before we get to tonight. Kevin He signing a contract. What a great story this young man is, and what an unbelievable year he's had since we met him for the first time in Vegas at the end of June, and you heard his name called by the Jets.
Yeah, it really is. Here's a guy who basically turned heads at development camp, at the rookie Young Stars event. And then when he kind of joined the main group at camp, and it's not easy to stand out when you're out there with established stars. The work ethic, the motor that never seemed to quit, that was very apparent in talking to him. Very polite and humble young man. Obviously a great story, being from a very non-traditional hockey country in China. Only one other player has ever been drafted from China, and that player never signed an NHL contract. So here was Kevin He today with the Jets making history. And I had a great phone chat with him earlier today. It's funny. He said it's what every kid dreams of, which in a way is a cliche, but in his case, Huss, it might be what kids, hockey players in China, kids that is, dream of, but it's a dream that really has never been able to become a reality, at least until today, because just signing a contract, even getting to that stage, was something that hadn't been done. I also talked to his general manager today with the Ice Dogs in Niagara, and he was tremendous as well, and just talking about the decision to make Kevin He the captain, talking about his return from Jets camp. He told me, Huss, that it was like Kevin He had experienced an epiphany, is how he put it. And he had a great line. He said, Kevin He was born to be a hockey player. And he's easy to root for. He's having a tremendous year. He's almost already matched his career high in points that he set last year, but in half the games. They have a really good team in Niagara, and he's leading the way. This is a guy, and go back to the draft, Huss, in Vegas. You were there. The Jets clearly wanted this player. They traded 2 draft picks to move up in the 4th round to get Kevin He. And Kevin Cheveldayoff at the time said, we knew we had to make a move. We didn't think he was still going to be around when their pick later that round was going to happen. So anytime a team makes a move, and especially in a later round like that, they really believe in him, and he's showing them that belief is well-founded.
Yeah, right now through the season, 29 games with the Niagara Ice Dogs, Kevin He has 23 goals, 20 assists for 43 points, and has been right up there in the mix with the top scorers in the Ontario Hockey League. Just to put it into perspective as to how big of a jump this is, to your point, Mike, last year had a great season, played 64 games, scored 31, had 53 points. But I mean, he's 8 goals and 10 points off his totals in 64 games last year, and he hasn't yet even played in game 30 of the season. And, you're right. He did stand out at training camp, and I'm not surprised to hear that, he ends up going back to training camp with his junior club, or back to the season, I guess.
Yeah.
And seem like a different player, because right from the first day of the rookie camp in Penticton and coming back, he seemed to get better and be more noticeable each and every day. Now, it wasn't like an 18-year-old 4th-round pick was going to jump on and be in the mix to make the club. But I'll tell you what, he obviously did himself a great service, and they didn't wait to get his name on a contract by getting it done today.
No, they certainly did not. And you look at the draft, and you have Kevin He, who very much could turn out to be a steal, and then another guy that was taken later in the draft, in Kieran Walton, taken in the 6th round. That's a round that I mean, you're taken in the 6th round, your chances of becoming an NHLer are slim and almost none. Kieran Walton is among the OHL scoring leaders, even ahead of Kevin He, actually. 51 points in 30 games. Last year, he had 43 points in 65 games. So this is a guy who's already blown past his production in less than half the time. And oh yeah, he's 6'6" and 216 pounds and moves around the ice like he's much smaller in terms of his speed. We might look back at the 2024 draft between Kevin He and Kieran Walton. And those are the kinds of things that you need to happen. Like, you look at teams that go on to great success, championship clubs, and they usually have a few players that you say, how did they get that guy there? You wonder if the Jets now have a couple of them in their system from this most recent draft.
Well, and just to talk about Walton for a minute, because I mean, like, we met him there at the draft. He was there. He was huge. I mean, he was 6'6". And, you looked at what he did last year, and it was, I mean, listen, you're into your draft year. I mean, he was 18 goals, 25 assists, 43 points in 65 games. But you figure, maybe this is just a guy that's huge, that, we know that hockey guys, like they value size. This year, I mean, he already has 8 more points. He's played 35 less games. And, we had Stephen Ellis on from Daily Faceoff, who covers the prospects, and had said that, Walton is continuing to take gigantic leaps forward, and is scoring at a rate that they're not sure. And like, I started thinking about Adam Lowry, because Adam Lowry, another big kid that played, obviously in the Dub, a little bit of a different league, but, when he was drafted, Lowry had played 66 games, was 18 and 27 for 45. Very, very similar numbers to what Kieran Walton put in last year. Now, Lowry's next season, he actually took a dip. He played less games, and he basically, I guess it was maybe his production was more, he was hurt, but he was 37 points in 36 games. And then the following year had that breakout offensive season with Swift Current, with 45 goals and 88 points in 72 games. It kind of seems like Kieran Walton has skipped ahead a year to that breakout season right now. And, at 6'6", 216, Adam Lowry's listed at 6'5", 210. Probably a nice frame. He can certainly move around. He's got hands. Yep. The one thing I was kind of getting at with Steven, I'm like, is he mean? Does he have much nasty in his game? Is he that tough? Certainly not a guy that spends a lot of time in the box, but
18 PIMs last year in 65 games and 18 this year so far. Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. And, the Jets have had a point to Mason Appleton. I mean, a guy that they picked in the 6th round that's turned into a very important part of this team. So it's not like there's no 6-rounders that make it, but not very many. But I'll tell you what, it looks like. I mean, I think if you did a redraft right now of last year's draft, I think both of those guys are getting picked significantly higher than where they were.
Here's one other thing about Walton that I think is important to note, Huss. Like, some guys put up points in the league, and then you look at the environment, and so they got a lot of points, but there's like 4 or 5 other players with a ton of points as well. And then you say, okay, well, they're a good player, clearly, but how much is their production a product of the environment they're in? How much are they carrying the line, or are they being carried to a degree by other good players? Kieran Walton has 51 points this year. The next highest scorer on the Sudbury Wolves has 32. He's got a 19-point lead over the next highest scorer, which tells you a lot about the environment he's playing in. His stats are not being propped up by other high-flying players. He is the high-flying player on that team.
Back to he for just a minute. He is a unique player. There was a lot, I was just saying to Remis, way more cameras around him when he was selected. But This could be big for the organization too. I mean, if he actually turns into a regular NHLer, I said I don't know whether they'll have the media contingent of like the Japanese do of Ohtani following him around. But I'll tell you what, I mean, it could be a real interesting and a great fit for Winnipeg with a little bit more shine on the team, the city, the organization from the most populous nation in the world in China. Maybe good for business as well. But anyways, great news for Kevin He. I think great news for the Winnipeg Jets and a great story today.
You might have to open up a Beijing bureau of Winnipeg Sports Talk, Huss.
I'm working on my Mandarin as we speak. We will be we'll be doing 2 shows a day, one English, and then I'll fire it up that way. You know, you never know.
There's enough of a time difference you could get a good nap in between doing your second show. We joke, but the fact is the NHL is trying to clearly make bigger strides in some cases non-traditional markets.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen them, go overseas, and you wonder, Huss, exactly like it at some point will there be an NHL game in China? I'm sure Gary Bettman and company would love to have that kind of footprint over there. And, there's only one player right now that's under NHL contract. Again, no pressure, Kevin. I asked him about that. He's obviously well aware of it. Smart kid. He said, I'm not on social media very much. That's probably good advice for any young athlete. But he said, obviously, my family and I are aware of it. I'm trying not to put any extra pressure on myself, but he called it a huge honor, and why wouldn't he look at it that way?
Remis, you'll remember this. Didn't the Kings go to China a couple of years back?
Oh, did they?
Yeah, I'm almost positive there was. I think it might have been Vancouver and LA.
Okay.
That played a game or two out in China. If I'm not mistaken, we'll look that up. But
I got to double check that. Yes. Kings Canucks played a game in China in September 2017.
Oh, so like a preseason game. Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, they went there over the international series can always get more international, especially when there's a market like that and potentially, a player of Chinese origin being here. It's probably a couple years away, but I wouldn't at all rule that out. In fact, I would expect it. If Kevin He becomes an NHLer.
Put it this way, do not bet against Kevin He at your own peril, because this is a guy, I mean, like every player is talented. He just seems to have certain intangibles and the right mindset. And again, just talking to people around him. He's got every tool, and he's certainly got a lot of people pulling for him. And, he just seems to be the kind of player that gets it. And I would not bet against him given the trajectory he seems to be on. He's still junior eligible for 2 more years. Next year, he would not be eligible to play in the A. So he's probably going back to junior for another year next year, but we'll see what he looks like when he comes to camp. And if he can pick up where he left off last year, then, the world would seem to be at his fingertips here.
Hey, Mike, before we go, let's get back to it tonight. Hellebuck in net for the Winnipeg Jets. You're taking on the San Jose Sharks. The Moms are on the trip. You'd really want, after that tough sledding with that crazy road trip, I mentioned this to you last week, I kind of considered the Columbus game as the final game of the road trip. They move on. Yeah. They get 5 out of 6 with the wins over Boston and Montreal, the OT loss to Vegas. Important for the team to continue building on that over these next couple games against the Sharks and the Anaheim Ducks before coming back for a huge one on Saturday against the Wild.
Yeah, I mean, you never want to, overlook any teams or say that, these are games that they should be winning. But quite frankly, these are games, these next 2, given, on paper anyways, the Jets would appear to be the superior team. But the Sharks, they've been playing teams tough lately. And one thing the Sharks have been doing is scoring some goals. And the Sharks team the Jets will face tonight looks quite a bit different than the one that they pummeled 8-3 back in, I think it was in early October, because Macklin Celebrini was hurt. And Celebrini is the real deal. He looks like a star. And, they've got some other young players really going as well. So this will not be an easy one for the Jets, but they got, an extra cheering section for sure. And just talking to some players before they hit the road and then hearing from a few of the guys yesterday in San Jose, clearly that's a source of pride and certainly motivation. They're aware, Huss. They went 0-3 on the Mums trip back in 2020, and some players were joking that the pressure is on if they don't want this to be the last Mums trip, so they better come up with a better performance. I guess one thing, and I haven't seen what Scott O'Neill had to say. Obviously, I'm not in San Jose here on this trip. Nikolai Ehlers was in a regular sweater yesterday. I do wonder if they're going to be extra cautious with him, especially with back-to-back. Would they potentially hold him out tonight with the idea of maybe getting him back in tomorrow? Would they keep him out until Saturday with the idea that then they get 2 more days off just to make sure that they don't tweak anything? I don't know the answer. Obviously, a Jets lineup with Nikolai Ehlers would look a lot different, which leads to the question, what do they do with Nikita Chibrikov, which I guess is a topic for another day, because he hasn't looked at a place at all either.
No, and I think the fact that Chibrikov has looked as good as he has, I think gives them maybe a little bit more comfort to not rush Nikolai Ehlers back. That's the last thing you want to do. And again, I don't know the exact nature of the injury. It was lower body, but if you want to give the kid a couple more games and bring Ehlers back for the game on the 21st, I think it probably makes a lot of sense, and Chibrikov certainly is deserving of another opportunity. Well, Mike, get a nap in. 9:30 start tonight. Looking forward to it. Appreciate you jumping on.
You bet, Huss. Take care.
Good stuff. There's Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press. We're going to head down to San Jose in just a minute and get the latest on the home team tonight and the breakout rookie season of number 1 overall pick Macklin Celebrini with Ted Ramey, Sharks host. Just before we do that, a big happy holidays to all of you from our friends at Princess Auto. Proudly founded in Winnipeg, headquartered in Winnipeg, and now coast to coast, and with 3 locations in Winnipeg, or Manitoba, I should say, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, and Brandon. Princess Auto, just in time for the holidays, is the place where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Gift cards also make a great gift for the Princess Auto fan and the family. And you could also get looking to what you might want to nudge your better half on what you want by shopping online 24/7, 365 over at princessauto.com. Still a bunch of Christmas parties on the weekend. We'll be having ours at the game against the Wild on Saturday night. But if you are heading out to festivities where you maybe need to bring a bottle, you got some whiskey lovers around, make sure to pop by your local Manitoba liquor marts and get your hands on the Canadian Club Classic 18-year-old high proof before it's gone. It's the 2nd issue of the Invitation Series, a one-time launch, and it's Canadian Club's first ever 18-year-old whiskey, offering the well-known smooth, well-balanced taste of Canadian Club Classic, carefully aged and bottled at a higher proof for a full-body tasting experience. Just awarded the 2024 International Wine and Spirit Competition gold medal as well. Get it before it's gone, because when it's gone, it ain't coming back. $79.95 at your local Manitoba liquor marts right now. The Canadian Club Classic 18-year-old high proof. And hey, just before we head down to San Jose, huge happy holidays, and thanks to our friends at Wallace & Wallace, the fencing and overhead door specialists in town. You've seen their trucks and fences all over the city. They've been doing it since 1946. Now, if your property needs the security and protection of a new fence, they've got you covered. Vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, wood fences. And if you need a new garage door, they've got Winnipeg's largest selection of overhead garage doors, one to perfectly match your house and add value to it at the same time. Give Wallace & Wallace a call, 452-2700. Their team will arrange a time to come out and give you a free estimate. You can also visit them at wallacefences.com or pop down to their showroom on Lowson Crescent off of Kenniston. All right, ahead of the Jets and Sharks tonight, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome in the host for San Jose Sharks hockey, Ted Ramey, to the program. Ted, what's going on? Thanks so much for doing this.
Hey, no problem. I was just laughing to myself at the commercials you were showing there because with the Princess Auto, as you might have guessed, it doesn't snow in San Jose very much. But I was like, look, it's a good looking shovel. Like, oh, it's a good looking snowblower. And they showed the whiskey. I was like, this speaks to me. And then fencing, I was like, I truly am the market audience here. So,
you love to
I was
hear it.
laughing.
Yeah, maybe not needing a snowblower anytime soon, but everything else you're down with.
I was right, but even still, even if you don't need it, I think we know that's part of the affliction of being a man. It's like, well, I could spend money on that because just in case.
Do you guys ever see snow at any point in the winter?
In the Bay Area, usually like once a decade, you'll get a dusting. Nothing that would ever be, like problematic, but enough to take some cool pictures. And I think the last time there was any really snow that like stayed on your car was 2008. That was just a brief little overnight. People woke up and, this was back in the MySpace days, so people were posting their photos there. But that, otherwise, I think 2 years ago, we got just like a couple snowflakes. But then if you get into the hills, you get up a little bit of elevation around the Bay Area, then you get a little bit of snow.
Ted, let's talk about the season so far before we get to tonight's game. This team was abjectly horrible last year. It's a tough time for an organization that had been consistently so good for so long, but in the cyclical nature of a salary cap a league, this will happen. And the rebuild was on. 11, 17, and 5 right now in the season. Totally energized by Macklin Celebrini, I'm sure. But is this team, I don't know, they're not doing great, but are they kind of ahead of schedule right now? They had that terrible start, but I think they played much better after that first 3 weeks of the season.
The 0-7-2 start was not necessarily indicative of who the Sharks were at that time. I don't think anyone really expected that to happen. It was a little bit of an easy comparison to a year ago when the Sharks started off 11 straight without a win, but it was very different circumstances. And there was a point where they had a shootout loss to Dallas and they lost in overtime on night number 1, and they had some other tight losses. So if you go back to the 11 straight that they lost last season to start the year, they were getting blown out. It was not really comparable, but it was an easy comparison for people to say, is this the same team again? But the good news was that players started to gel. The Sharks got their first win on October 28th against Utah. They were down 4-1, rallied with 3 extra attacker goals in the waning moments before winning it in overtime 5-4. And since that point, you look at their record now versus the 0-7-2 start, it's the majority of games they've been getting points out of, probably closer to a 500 or slightly below 500 team than anything that's going to be truly contending. But you do see with Macklin Celebrini, who we'll get more to in a moment, I'm sure, Will Smith. You've looked at emerging talents like William Eklund, who was a big draft pick a couple years ago. Fabian Zetterlund has been consistent. Tyler Toffoli, who you guys know, he's a very talented player. It took a little bit for the Sharks to gel. And I think that once they did start gelling, people realized, okay, this is not what we saw last year, which was, not good, to put it bluntly. You talk about a 19-win team, a season after a 22-win team, 41 wins in 2 seasons. It was not good, and it was a necessary process to complete the teardown before what we would now consider the rebuild. And many people considered the trade of Tomas Hertl the end of the teardown and the true start of the rebuild. But it's been a process. But now we're starting to see the snowblower at the end of the tunnel, as it were.
You know what? Before we kind of dive in on Celebrini, tell us about Ryan Warsofsky and the effect that he's had as a new young coach with a team that probably really needed a new voice, but also a new direction, considering where they spent the last 2 years in the standings.
Yeah, and just, to put it in perspective, I don't think the blame should be on David Quinn. I think because of the roster teardown, because of the trades, because of the moving of talent, He was not the guilty party in the room.
No one was winning games with that roster last year.
No. And I really like David Quinn a lot, and it's unfortunate that he couldn't be the man going forward. But I think there was the concern that if you were going to bring in your Macklins and your Will Smiths and these other young players, that what would happen if the team took steps backwards and then you'd be switching on the head coach? I guess you could make the comparisons to Connor Bedard in the situation in Chicago right now. But with Ryan Warsofsky, he's been here. He was an assistant for the past couple of seasons on Quinn's staff, working with the defensemen. As I joked with him, I said it was 10% Erik Karlsson, 90% Ryan Warsofsky. They got that 100-point season out of him. But he connects well with the guys. He's young. I'm 42, and when he got hired, I told my kids who were 11 and almost 9, I was like, yeah, he's really young. He's going to be 37 right when the season starts. And they say, well, Dad, that's not that young. I'm like, thanks, kids. That's great. I appreciate the commentary here. But it's a good vibe. I think he understands the plight of the young athlete with social media and just the amount of coverage that goes on. I mean, with Macklin, Celebrini, and Will Smith, we can talk about these guys. The type of coverage that exists for them previously only existed for top-tier quarterbacks and or number one NBA draft picks. And now the hockey world and the way that social media has specifically exploded the prospect world, these guys have been getting every nuance of their game broken down since they were 14, 15 years old. So I think Warsofsky understands that. And I also think that he, in the minds of many, was being groomed as a head coach somewhere in the NHL. He had a lot of hype about him. He has a lot of people who are in his corner. He has experience winning everywhere he goes, specifically in the AHL. And I think he just had the right mold of what they were looking for to deal with an up-and-coming team, because he is, I don't know if you saw, he just got fined $25,000 for his conduct during the game against Utah the other night, in which the Sharks were penalized 8 times, which he let his frustrations be known. But he is, he'll wear his emotions on his sleeve. But he is, I think, in being a younger guy, the youngest in the NHL right now, the right guy for this moment in time in San Jose. And, every great coaching situation comes to an end in all sports. I mean, that's how it goes. But the way that he's got the team responding, his overall vibe, it feels pretty good in San Jose right now, which I know when you look at our record, it's like, well, Ted, how good can it be? But the juxtaposition of what they were a year ago versus the way things are trending now with the young talent, I think a lot of people are excited for what Warsofsky potentially has to work with over the next couple of seasons.
Well, there's no doubt about it. And listen, there's nothing more exciting than they went through a lot and it was a miserable season, but you might look back in a few years and say that was all worth it because we've got Macklin Celebrini. And it's such a great fit. I mean, he's got background in the Bay Area with his dad, with the Warriors. But holy smokes, we didn't get a chance to see him. He was out for a few games when the Sharks played Winnipeg earlier this season. So I think for most Jet fans, this might be the first time they actually get a chance to watch this young man play. Fill us in on what you're seeing night in and night out from one of the youngest players in the National Hockey League and the impact he's making in year one.
Now, this is going to sound hyperbolic, and God forbid a sports talk guy ever get into hyperbole. We would never do that. But
not us.
The way that I am conveying it to people in just who haven't seen him game to game is I say that Macklin Celebrini does things in a game in, game out basis that I only see from what I would consider the top 5 players in the league. And I'm not saying he's a top 5 player in the league because he's played 20 odd games. We're not there yet. However, his ability to impact the game, his ability to kind of make defenders when he's working through the neutral zone with speed, he's very heads up. You can see there's a bit of a uh-oh and a little bit of on their heels, not sure what to do next. And that's something that, you see with a McDavid or a McKinnon specifically, because they do have the ability to rush with speed and defenders don't know what to do. When you add in Macklin Celebrini's heads up play, there was a great breakdown on the Hockey Psychology YouTube page where he says Macklin Celebrini is such a heads up player that he doesn't know what the puck looks like. And I was like, yes, that's accurate, because it was put into words something that I had seen. He's always heads up. He is the definition of head up, head on a swivel, however you want to define it, constantly scanning. What I like to see is a player who has processing power, and I think that is probably a little bit too tech-centric to our society, but he sees it. And people often say that he slows down the game and that he has that impact. Like, you may say that about great players. I don't know that he slows things down. I think that he is, again, processing things faster than everybody out there on the ice. And I have to slow myself down because he's 18. I don't think he's 18 and a half yet. He is so ahead of schedule. And we all thought that we were getting a good player. And I was very excited. But the whole paradigm had been, you're getting a good player, but you're not getting Connor Bedard. And now everybody's been watching him through, I think he's played 21 games now and saying to themselves, oh, this guy is like Connor Bedard. And I'm not even going to start to get into the quote unquote who's better between the two because they're 18 and 19 years old. That's an argument that will only make me look bad in 3, 4, 10, 20 years because they're both phenomenal young talents. But I think the greater takeaway is that Macklin Celebrini looks like he does have the ability to be one of those game-changing generational talents, and people didn't know that when he was drafted. I certainly didn't know it. Now, to give you a little bit of background, though, because this is interesting, I also do play-by-play for the San Jose Earthquakes Major League Soccer. My color commentator is Joe Cannon, who for a while played in Vancouver with the Whitecaps. The head medical trainer there at the time was Rick Celebrini, Macklin's dad, who eventually got hired by the Warriors, which was why Macklin was a junior Shark and played in San Jose for a time. In some formative teenage and younger years. And Joe, at the end of his career, he was dealing with, a tired knee for a goalkeeper, and he'd blown it out when he was younger. And he said that he used to go to Rick before practices and stuff, and he said that he would nearly limp in there, spend a half hour on the table, and that he would, suddenly be done, and he would just feel like a brand new man, and said that Rick, who, by the way, was, a former professional player himself in soccer, was like a savant, and he had the ability to just, get things out of Joe's body that at the end of his 30s, he didn't think were still there. So you start thinking about that, and this is what Joe was telling me when they drafted him, and he was saying, his kid, he's been around it. His dad knows what it's like to be a pro athlete. He's a trainer, probably knows about, dealing with his body and managing things. He kind of said, I'm very curious to see, just what he's going to be. And I think Joe maybe had a ahead of the curve inkling on what Macklin was going to be. And then plus, with his dad with the Warriors, he's watching one of the great all-time teams in North American sports, watching Steph Curry and Draymond Green and Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant, kind of prepare themselves for a while. So, Macklin got a behind the curtain view of what it takes to be an elite athlete in professional sports, in addition to having his dad, who was a pro athlete and, a trainer and working with athletes. So it's really built into something as special that once we got into training camp, because he looked good at our prospect camp in the summer and looked good at the rookie face-off in the early fall, just before the start of training camp. But when we saw him in training camp, it was kind of are you guys seeing this? Because he immediately looked like the best player on the ice. And then they got in the preseason game number 1, and it was again the same thing. And it's kind of consistently looked like that with Macklin. He's not always the best player on the ice, but very consistently he will show you that he is of that ability. So it's been eye-opening to say the least, but it's been really fun because you thought you were getting a number 1 overall pick, and then now you think you might be looking at a generational talent, as I, like everyone else, put way too much pressure and expectation on an 18-year-old. When I was 18, I was hanging out with my buddies. We were figuring out what we were going to do when we were going to watch the Sharks or the 49ers or the A's or the Giants or the Warriors, or, we were not, we're not trying to be the next face of a league, which it's hilarious just to see all the pressure being put on 18-year-olds, which is amazing, but hockey is that way right now. We have so much young talent.
Well, and having, his father being involved and around professional sports all his life, he seemed to be way ahead of the game mentally, his preparedness for it, and now what he's doing on the ice. It's going to be fun to watch. I mean, this entire Young Sharks team, I think we'll probably get to see on TV a little bit more going forward now that they've got a guy like this. And I will say, I was doing my other show today earlier with Dustin Nielsen in Edmonton, and we got talking about Celebrini and Bedard. And I did have a take. We're talking a lot about the Four Nations coming up. I did say between the two of Bedard and Celebrini, I'd be willing to bet that Celebrini more likely to be an Olympian next year for Canada than Bedard. But I wouldn't be surprised if both of those young players, because they certainly are the future of Canadian hockey. Ted, thanks so much for the time. This was great. Let's do it again sometime.
Anytime.
And when we need to lean on someone that knows the MLS, we'll hit you up as well.
Yes. I'm your man. Anytime. Just give me a ring, and I'm more than happy to jump on. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Liv's an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much, and enjoy the game tonight.
Will do.
Good stuff. There's Ted Ramey from San Jose, the host of the San Jose Sharks broadcast and the play-by-play voice of the SJ Earthquakes of MLS. All right, we are going to, we've got some audio from Arnie, not a ton from San Jose, but we'll have that coming up. We're also going to talk Vikings coming up in a minute. But listen, it's not Beer Friday, as it were. It is Tuesday. That being said, every day is a great day for a little treat from our friends at Little Brown Jug down in the Exchange District.
You train day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
All right, yes, I know there'll be a lot of festivities over the holidays that will be made that much better with Winnipeg's favorite local beer, Little Brown Jug. Hey, folks, time is ticking. Christmas is just about here. If you're in the gift card market, make sure to pop by our great friends over at Boston Pizza. They got a great deal right now. When you buy a $50 BP gift card, you'll receive a free $10 bonus card. And listen, if you have a long list or are purchasing for a company or office, check this out. When you purchase $1,000 in gift cards or more, you'll get an additional 10% in gift cards, which ends up being a 30% bonus, or $300 on gift cards of over $1,000. And BP, if you haven't really planned anything yet and are looking to get the gang together for a little holiday party, you can try the new holiday menu in the BP dining room, have a casual party in the sports bar, or have the BP catering set up and serve at your office. And don't forget the new holiday menu, including the spicy shrimp fettuccine and the rib and wing duo as well. Pop by your local BP tonight, late start, maybe an ice cold schooner, some world famous BP wings, a gourmet pizza, your chance to win great prizes in the Pick a Player contest. And don't forget, still time to enter to win that grand prize trip for two to Boston to see the Jets take on the Bruins. That game got a lot more interesting, as it is the rematch of last Tuesday's 8-1 beatdown by the Jets on Boston earlier this year. And hey, to finish off your Christmas list for sports fans, get down to Royal Sports at 750 Pembina Highway. Royal's buzzing right now because the biggest sports store you'll find, never mind on the prairies, maybe anywhere, is locked and loaded and stocked up to take care of everything you need for the sports fans or players in the family. The biggest and best selection of Jets merchandise, jerseys, hoodies, toques, hats, you name it, they've got it. Blue Bomber gear, the best of the NFL, NHL, Major League Baseball, NBA, and of course, international soccer as well. Need a pair of skates to get on the river this year? They can hook you up with that, all the way to sticks and hockey equipment. And, of course, amazing gift ideas over in the Kings Skate, Snow, and Surf side, like their Herschel section and their Big Yeti section as well. 750 Pembina Highway, you know it well. Get on down there and take care of all of your Christmas shopping in one spot at Royal Sports. Give them a follow on Insta as well at Royal Sports Winnipeg for merch drops, sales, and some great holiday gift ideas. Now, I do want to quickly get to some fan feedback from fansfirst.ca. Of course, Fans First is your number one spot for both buying and selling tickets for Winnipeg events and, of course, Winnipeg hockey. I can tell you, as a season ticket holder with a couple of pairs, there's an occasion where I'll have both pairs. I'll need to do something. I only go to Fans First. Best customer service. And the bottom line is, if you're getting tickets or selling, there is simply no fees. What you see is what you pay, a small percentage on sales, but nothing like the exorbitant and obscene numbers that you'll get when you're buying tickets at somewhere like StubHub. Check out the site today if you haven't already. No fees, fansfirst.ca. So a lot of comments earlier in the show on the feedback, on the podcast clips that we had with Blake Wheeler and Andrew Ladd. And, you know, it just goes to show how much of a polarizing figure I think Blake Wheeler was and still is to some Winnipeg Jet fans. Kevin Kowalik said, so Laine played Fortnite alone instead of going out to bars and teammates. Who cares? Other people will say Laine was a big part of that as well. We'll probably never really know. It just was very much unfortunate that wasn't able to stick together because of the potential that it had. Matt Jansen said Blake's probably contemplating a late season comeback for playoffs. If not, he'll probably retire next summer. Certainly, that could be the case. I think that we'll hear a retirement at a certain point, and tell you what, it probably would be a good point. Maybe Blake Wheeler does sign a one-day contract and retire a Winnipeg Jet, where he spent the majority of his career. Cole Chachuk says we're going to need a Heritage Classic again one day with 2.0 here players, including Wheeler, Ladd, Buff, and Little. Sign me up for that. Wouldn't that be so much fun? Goes to show you how old we're getting, though. The fact that this team is now into 13 seasons. It really is crazy of how time flies, and young guys like Blake Wheeler and Brian Little now seemingly finished with their National Hockey League careers. Keep all your fan feedback coming in the chat and at any time at Sports Talk WPG on X. Fan feedback is brought to you by Fans First, by fans, for fans, no fees. All right, we're going to talk some Vikings and big golf news with the Manitoba Open coming to Breezy Bend. But Remo, we've been talking a lot of Jets Sharks, and sounds like we've actually got a little bit of Arnie from Post Morning Skate today.
Yeah, shout out to Mitch Clinton and the Jets, website Jets TV. They're there asking questions, and yeah, Scott Arniel did speak after a very brief practice. No lineup changes. It seems like we thought maybe Nikolai Ehlers would get into a game at this trip. He did skate in a regular jersey yesterday. All we know, Connor Hellebuck was at the optional morning skate and doing his starting routine. So he'll be in net tonight. You'd think Eric Comrie's going to get the second game of the back-to-back tomorrow. And yeah, Jets, Sharks, and a lot of talk about how the Sharks, they didn't have Celebrini before it. It was amazing hearing Ted Ramey just talk about, hey, they thought that he was going to be good, but I think he's exceeded a lot of expectations. He's been awesome.
I've watched a few of their games, the late games on center ice, and this kid is an absolute player. The Jets are going to need to be ready. Here's Arniel on going up against a very different Sharks team that has Celebrini as opposed to the one that they lit up last month.
Sorry, I'm having a cough attack here while trying to grab this thing.
Great timing. Great timing. You can't press a button and cough at the same time.
I'd screwed up, and then I'd screwed up here.
We didn't see Celebrini and Smith. They're two young kids, prospects, obviously, that are actually really starting to play well. And they've added the veteran group that kind of helps them. I know they struggled early, but they've really become a competitive team. And watching their last few games, they're not going to give you anything. You have to go and take the game from them. They think that they're a real good transition team. They if you turn pucks over, they're coming back at you in a hurry. And if like I said, if we play our game, our structure, you want to make sure that we're doing that well. We need to go and take it from them, and it'll be a good match.
All right, so there's Arnie on the Sharks with Celebrini. This is a team that can skate. They've got a lot of young guns, a lot of wheels. Here is on defending the rush attack of San Jose that at times this year has been quite potent.
Yeah, watched a lot of their sort of chances the last couple of games, the St. Louis game, the Utah game. They came off turnovers just inside the line. They came off their transition, their breakouts. They're quick. They go. They got some forwards that can skate, and they're going to attack the net. So, that like you mentioned there, we were good against. We did a really good job against Montreal, who was a same type of thing, an attack team. Numbers coming all the time. A really explosive defense that were always in the rush, and I thought we did a good job of sort of taking the guts of the ice away, and it'll be just as critical tonight.
All right, we got another milestone tonight from a Winnipeg Jet. And how about this, Remis? Neil Pionk playing game number 500 in the National Hockey League. And by remedial math, this is $399 as a Winnipeg Jet. Tomorrow will be $400 as a Winnipeg Jet. And listen, Pionk with 24 points in 32 games has been a real bright spot this year. Struggled at times last season. Much, much better this year, and a big part of the reason why the Winnipeg Jets are where they are in the standings right now. Coach Arneal was asked about Neil Pionk and playing in his 500th game tonight in the NHL.
No, obviously, to start with the person, he's just a great young man, and he's a leader in our room. Loves being in Winnipeg. I know they just had their daughter was born there this summer, and he just takes a lot of pride in being a Winnipeg Jet. He's a real good sort of all-round defenseman. He can play an offensive game. He's a great first-pass defenseman. You use him on this. Obviously our second power play is a big part of that. But then he also, he loves the fact that he has a little bit of an edge to him and has a tendency to disrupt the opposition, get under the skin of lots of players. He just like his compete, and he's having a great start to the year, and hopefully it continues.
There's Arnie on Pionk's 500, and here is Neil Pionk himself on playing game 500 tonight for the Winnipeg Jets in the Shark Tank.
It's a good accomplishment. It makes me think about all the times the tough times you've been through, and to get to this point is pretty special.
In terms of, just the way that the schedule works out, kind of cool that you get to have your mom here for game number 500 too. Was that something you were kind of like, I don't know how much you look ahead to kind of counting up and seeing where it might be, but kind of cool that it works out that way?
Yeah, I'd say a week or so ahead, I'd kind of counted up and figured it would be on the mom trip. It was pretty cool because, she was there from day one and brought me to a lot of practices. I'm sure tied my skates a few times, so pretty special to have her here.
All right, Reem, I think I know who's going to be on the WST parlay with Cole Perfetti tonight.
Well, hey, I was looking at the stats from the last time they played, and yes, they won 8-3, October 18.
Perfetti was 2-2, I think.
Okay, Perfetti was 2-2, 4 points. Neil Pionk was 1-3 for 4 points. So I'm not saying history is going to repeat itself, but I don't know. Sometimes I like taking line 2 on the road. They get a better matchup, and Perfetti, I think he's due. And Chibrikov, he didn't score for a game, so you think it's going to happen now. He scores every game, right? So
maybe Chibrikov, Celebrini, or not Celebrini, Chibrikov, Perfetti, and Pionk. Oh, this could be one of our greatest ones because they're a 227 favorite. We'll get to that in the Coolbet lines. And again, if you pop by later, don't forget tonight is our December poker tourney with Edmonton Sports Talk, Winnipeg Sports Talk, and the Lock Shop. We'll do the Coolbet lines later on, but if you go to coolbet.com, click on poker, download the poker app, and then go into tournaments, there's a little magnifying glass. Just put in Lock or Lock Shop. Get in there. It gets going at 9 p.m. Would love to have you part of it. Hell of a lot of fun. $30 entry. I think it says 20 euros or so, but we've got some WSTers looking to have better performances like myself and Michael Remis, and guys like Randy D. Eagle Eyes, and our defending champ Nick Lee-Imagn of Top Line looking to make it happen again. That's coming up at 9 p.m. We are going to talk a little golf later on. Cory Johnson from Breezy Bend, they're hosting the Manitoba Open. We're going to do that, but We got to talk a little football. And I know there's a lot of you Viking fans that are feeling pretty darn good about your 12-2 squad after a beatdown of the Chicago Bears last night on Monday Night Football in those clean white unis last night. Man, I thought that look was awesome. But the bottom line, it was about winning. Sam Darnold does it again, 12-2 on the season. And no better person to talk to than our good friend Matt Coller in Minneapolis with the Purple Insider that continues to crank out content on a daily basis. Highly recommend you check out the YouTube channel if you're a Viking fan, or the podcast feed at Purple Insider. But right now, let's welcome Matt into the program to talk about the big win and the future of Sam Darnold with the Minnesota Vikings. Matt, it must be pretty fun cranking this stuff out right now with this Vikings team opening eyes around the league week after week after week. People almost have to accept this team's at the top of the NFC right now.
Yeah, I started the post-game podcast after the win over the Bears with just saying they're 12-2. They're 12-2. They're 12-2. I mean, this is the best start to a season that they have had since the 1998 Vikings that ended up going 15-1. And throughout the second half of the season, we always have kind of waited for, was there going to be a letdown game? I mean, it's Roger Goodell's NFL. There's always one game where you disappoint or you just don't play as well as the team expects and you lose to a bad team or something. That happens to the best teams in the NFL around the NFL every single week. And for the Vikings, it just has not happened. They have had some ugly ones that they had to survive, like a win over Jacksonville where Sam Darnold threw 3 interceptions. It wasn't the prettiest win over Arizona a couple weeks ago that Sam Darnold had to lead a game-winning comeback, but they have continued to find ways to win. And then over these last 2 weeks, 2 blowout victories, one over Kirk Cousins at US Bank Stadium, and then beating the Bears. That was, if there was going to be a letdown game, the whole world talking about Sam Darnold, his contract, all that stuff. And then the way it's played out with the Lions, they lose to Buffalo. Suddenly the door is open for the Vikings to potentially win the division. And now even the conference they could win. There was every reason to get a little overhyped, a little too jacked up, a little too looking forward to Seattle and Green Bay and Detroit. And instead, they came out and they just kicked the crap out of the Bears and moved on to the next week. I mean, we have reached the point where it's official. This team is not only a legitimate Super Bowl contender, but it is a special group that has rallied around Sam Darnold, that has come together around Kevin O'Connell in ways that I can't say I've ever seen before with a head coach. And now they're going down the stretch as not only one of the best teams, but also you have to think about, too, one of the healthiest teams, and I'll knock on wood for them for that, but they have had very few injuries, and a lot of times in the NFL, that's what it comes down to, is just how healthy do you stay, and here the Vikings are with their full lineup going into these last 3 games.
You know, we got to talk about KOC and Sam Darnold, but just as far as last night goes, I mean, I mentioned to you before we came on, I was at the US Bank Stadium the week before for Kirk Cousins' return, and just being around the Twin Cities that weekend and being in some of the sports bars and going to the game, you felt, I mean, it seemed like when talking to Viking fans, they felt like they were playing with house money because, you know, this wasn't expected, but now that they're here, why the hell not keep going for it? And, you know, with a game like last night, maybe just want to touch on it. I mean, obviously the offensive performance was great, but this defense continues to open eyes around the league. And a lot of guys that aren't household names that probably should be getting more shine, slowly but surely are doing that as this team continues to win and win and win.
Yeah, your 2 points kind of come together there because midway through the season, I think Vikings fans had a tough time fully buying into this team really being a legitimate contender. I mean, for one, they lost 2 games in a row in a span of 4 days, and their left tackle got hurt for the season. So that was a freak out moment for the fan base. But the other part of it was they had won some close games that maybe weren't the prettiest, and they had to rely on their defense. So there was a little bit of okay, they went on the road to beat Tennessee. Congratulations, I guess. Let's see what happens when they get down the road in December. And then for last night, the defense to completely dominate in a game where Sam Darnold was not really at his best from the start. I still think he had a fine game, maybe not from a fantasy perspective, but his one interception wasn't a bad decision, and he really worked the underneath passing game. But the offense wasn't just relying on him the way that it had against Arizona and the way that it definitely did against the Atlanta Falcons. For them to show up and then also Aaron Jones to run the way that he did, it really showed that they can win in multiple ways. And that's when everybody starts to buy into a team. 2 weeks ago, it's got to win at the last moment with your quarterback converting a 4th and 6. Okay, check that box. Got to win a shootout against an Atlanta offense with a ton of talent, blow them out by 3 scores. Okay, check that box. And then at home with all the hype, let's see the defense show back up after there had been a few weeks where I felt that the defense got really worn down. They were on the field a lot in overtime at Soldier Field a few weeks ago, then on the field a lot versus a good Arizona team that ran the football well. Atlanta ran the football well against them and stayed on the field for a long time. So they needed, maybe the extra day helped them a little bit of rest, but they really needed one of those performances to kind of remind you, yes, this actually is a good defense. They are not perfect, but they do have a lot of talent, and they're actually going to get some players back. Ivan Pace Jr., who's an important linebacker for them, is going to come back soon. Stephon Gilmore practiced last week, didn't play last night, but he's going to come back soon as well. And with the way that Brian Flores can draw up this defense, each game is its own unique game plan because of the personnel that he has. All the veteran players that they have, they can make changes and communicate and adjust what they're doing at the line of scrimmage to where they have a game plan, but it's not set at all. It's not like they're just playing his scheme, his system. They are playing a new invention on a weekly basis, which you would not be able to do without Blake Cashman, who they signed this offseason, or Harrison Smith, who is a borderline Hall of Fame player, or all the other veterans that they have. And it's funny about the NFL is we were talking about the expectations preseason and the Vegas lines that, had Chicago ahead of them. And one thing that I think gets overlooked sometimes is that veteran teams usually win. Like when you look at who's deep in the playoffs, it's oftentimes teams with a lot of experience. And I think that we've seen the reason for that they're not teaching these guys how to play football. They're doing extremely high level stuff with them. And that makes life much more challenging on the opposing quarterbacks.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because let's face it, the narrative around this team was that this was going to be a young team. J.J. McCarthy was going to be the quarterback. They gave up all that draft capital to get Dallas Turner. And neither of those players have had big roles, although we did have a Dallas Turner sighting last night. He's not getting a ton of snaps, but to get in, a huge confidence booster for the youngster. But it's been a lot of guys that maybe people didn't think that would be very important pieces, not only getting the playing time, but proving that they can play with everybody else in the NFL. And it's been so much fun to watch. Listen, the biggest story, I think, around the Vikings is the quarterback combination and coach. Kevin O'Connell and Sam Darnold. We'll get to Darnold's future in a minute, but you're around this team on a daily basis. How much credit does KOC get for what we're seeing from Sam Darnold? And I guess you can talk to even a guy like Danny Dimes deciding to come here amongst of other offers. It seems like quarterbacks want to come to play for this guy because proven year after year, he's going to put you in the best chance to be the best that you can be.
Yeah, when Caleb Williams was dapping up Kevin O'Connell after the game, I wonder if he whispered in his ear, "Take me with you. Bring me over there. Help me." Kevin O'Connell. So when you think about the great offenses in NFL history, the first one that comes to mind for me is the San Francisco 49ers with Bill Walsh and Joe Montana and Jerry Rice and, in the backfield, Roger Craig and Tom Rathman. And I think what you have here, I'm not saying it's the 1988 49ers, but what you have here is the combination of all those things coming together. And what we're always trying to do in football is say, well, how much is that person responsible for it? And how much is it the coach? How much is it Sam Darnold's actually good? And how much is it Justin Jefferson and the roster that the Vikings built? And it's really impossible to parse that out, but they all have had to come together to make this happen. That if you gave maybe Sam Darnold all these things earlier in his career, maybe he wouldn't have been considered a bust until now. Maybe he would have been just a hit. But I think it's everything. When you have Justin Jefferson, that totally changes the dynamic in the NFL. There's a reason why they paid Jefferson like a quarterback this offseason, because if you watch the coverages and the way that they try to play against Justin Jefferson, they throw everything at him, which leaves Addison one-on-one. I think Addison said last week that he's never faced double coverage, and I think that's true. TJ Hawkinson, huge game last night with some big first down conversions underneath, always facing man-to-man coverage. Well, why has TJ Hawkinson been a better, receiving tight end here than maybe he was in Detroit? That goes back to number 18. And the usage of number 18 and all these other weapons goes back to Kevin O'Connell. And then there's this other part of it too, where when Sam Darnold arrived here, he was hopeful to kind of show the world that he could be a starting quarterback in the league. He was coming off a year where he sat behind Brock Purdy and had a very good experience in San Francisco, but 1 year, $10 million in a world where we're paying quarterbacks $60 million really shows you where he was at in his career. And right from the get-go, Kevin O'Connell was insistent, and not just to the media, from everyone I've talked to, insistent that Sam Darnold could be a really good quarterback. He insisted to people in the building. He insisted to his friends, to the other players from the start, from OTAs, from the minute they signed him. And even as they were going through the preseason, he found a way to balance developing J.J. McCarthy and also talking about him as the future with pouring himself into Sam Darnold and creating a situation where Darnold could feel like it was his team, even though he knows that the rookie is there. It's a very difficult thing to balance, but Kevin O'Connell, when it comes to interpersonal relationships, should write a book for all business leaders about how to get people to buy into your message, because that sounds impossible, and yet he was able to do that. And as the season went along, I think they coached Sam Darnold extremely well into this offense. They played to his strengths extremely well. They run a lot of play action, which he's very good at, and they run a lot of downfield routes, which are really his specialty, as opposed to trying to pick teams apart like Tom Brady underneath or something like that. It's the combination of absolutely everything to come together. And if you took one part away, maybe it wouldn't be the same. But I think that O'Connell has all these pieces and knows exactly how to dial it up schematically. This is a guy who was Sean McVay's offensive coordinator when he won the Super Bowl. He knows his X's and O's, but then he also knows his human beings too, and knows how to keep Justin Jefferson patient in a week where he maybe doesn't get as many catches, and then find ways to get him the football the following week after Jordan Addison has shredded it up. It's really all come together. But just to finish the point, the guy who deserves the most credit for Sam Darnold is Sam Darnold. Period. He's taken the coaching. He has come here, and there hasn't been a single word about his past or the Jets, or there's been no snarkiness or no entitlement. The way that he handled J.J. McCarthy being drafted is they went on a golf trip together. That was how he handled it throughout the offseason. So I think Sam Darnold, and the way that he has sort of stayed in the moment, but also handled himself like such a great pro for this entire year. His press conferences may not be the most exciting, but he's really taken a great approach to this, and he's learned a lot, I think, throughout this season about how to play quarterback. So it's been amazing to watch come together. You just don't get this too many times in the NFL, where somebody is down and out and left for dead in the league and then comes back like this. There's only a handful of examples that I can ever think of.
Well, and listen, I still think he's a steal at 8-1 for comeback player of the year. I don't know why Joe Burrow's a minus 1,000 favorite right now when you look at what Darnold is doing, but it seems like people have been a little bit slow to actually pay attention and accept what's happening with the Minnesota Vikings. Now, on Darnold, I was heading down with a friend that's a psycho Vikings fan, and about half of the trip on the way to the Twin Cities was all right, how far do they have to go where they just have to bring Sammy Darts back? And it was funny. He goes and has a 5-touchdown game. I come back, I fire up Purple Insider, and you and Kevin Seifert of ESPN had a great conversation about where things stand. And I think it's safe to say that 12 wins in 14 games has significantly changed what is possible moving forward. You've got this young man in J.J. McCarthy that is thought to be the future of the franchise. But you've got a guy that's made your team elite and a legit Super Bowl contender on a 1-year deal. How does this move forward? And I guess what are the options for the Vikings and for Sam Darnold?
What's so unique about this situation versus other type of pop-up seasons that we've seen in the past, Case Keenum in most recent Vikings history, is that this guy was the number 3 overall pick in the draft. He is a large man with a huge arm, and the playmaking stuff was always there in his career before. It's not hard to find. If you just go to YouTube and look at Jets highlights, you can see all the same plays that he's made, but he's never had the structure before, the coaching before, the weapons before to be consistent. And so there's a few really important things about when they consider bringing him back. Number one,
he's only 27 too, Matt.
That's exactly what number one is. He's only 27 years old. Quarterbacks are playing into their late 30s now, so you can continue to have a window with him. The few other key points are there's this big fear of paying quarterbacks from Vikings fans specifically because they paid one that wasn't that great in Kirk Cousins, and they could never get over that. But look around the NFC, all the teams that are making the playoffs. Washington has a rookie quarterback, but everybody else has paid their quarterback. Jalen Hurts has been paid. Jordan Love has been paid. Geno Smith, who the Vikings are going to play. How about Matthew Stafford? They're in the race once again, and I'd be afraid of the Rams going into the playoffs. And they gave him a contract. There are so many options with the salary cap these days, and it is shooting up. Every time Jeff Bezos buys more football games, that salary cap goes more through the roof, and every deal you work out seems like a great bargain 2 years later. The other point is there's a franchise tag, and the Vikings could franchise tag Sam Darnold, extend their window out to another year, and just develop J.J. McCarthy, who, by the way, has not thrown a pass in the NFL outside of one preseason game. So maybe it would actually be good for J.J. McCarthy to develop in a year where he could practice every day and where he could work out every day through the entire season and learn while he was actually active on game day. And he'll be the ripe old age of 23 by the end of next year, J.J. McCarthy. So it would be such a shame if they got another year to develop this potential future quarterback, right? I mean, we talk constantly about these quarterbacks getting thrown into the fire and, hey, you should always sit them and develop them. And then, it's like, no, wait, we got to get to J.J. McCarthy as fast as possible, even though Sam Darnold is playing this well. So there's a way to kind of split the difference and extend the sample size, which is the franchise tag. And I don't think that would limit what they could do with their roster because already this year they're paying $40 million to the salary cap to the quarterback position because $28 million is dead cap from Kirk Cousins. But what they did is went into free agency, and when they signed guys, they signed them to lower cap hits early in the contract, bigger cap hits later. So yes, 3 years down the road, you're going to have to deal with some of these big salary cap hits, but not this year, and really not too bad for next year, which allows you to compete again for a Super Bowl with Sam Darnold and then go to McCarthy if that's the best thing to do. Or if Darnold is just an elite quarterback in back-to-back seasons, you can move on from McCarthy and give him a chance to start somewhere else. So I think there is kind of a hedge option here, or a play the fence type of option that they could take. Once you've reached this point, though, it's pretty hard to argue that, oh yeah, you should actually just move on to a guy who's never played in the NFL before and just try to do this again when Darnold has been this good.
The Baker Mayfield comparison is so interesting. I mean, Baker went to Tampa on a 1-year, $4 million deal. He earned himself a 3-year extension, and Sam has done that and even more. And just before we get off of this, he seems, and he said it himself, he loves to be a Viking. There's nowhere else that he'd want to be, and I can't blame him considering he's having the success that he's had right now. but he has really bought into helping JJ McCarthy as well. I mean, what was this that JJ's got a VR helmet on during practice and a camera on Darnold's hand and kind of experiencing practice through him? I mean, I've never heard of anything like that before.
Yeah, they got a camera on the top of Sam Darnold's head, so JJ McCarthy can basically experience practice. And they also have inside the facility, which has to be the best in the NFL, they have this entire room where a full wall, and I'm talking like 50 feet, is a video screen. So he can stand in that room if he wants to and watch it on this mega huge screen to see everything that Darnold's looking at. But I think a major key is it's that, of course, seeing where his eyes are going in practice to get a good sense of like how things are supposed to work. But another part of it too is hearing what he's saying and calling out the protections and calling out the plays from inside the huddle to where JJ McCarthy can get as close to practicing as he can. And also McCarthy and Kevin O'Connell meet during the week, every week, to go over some things from the previous week. So they've put effort into developing JJ McCarthy along the way. I have no idea where Kevin O'Connell gets the hours in the day to talk with everyone, game plan, work with Brian Flores on the defense, develop JJ McCarthy, but he is incredible at that. So they have been thinking along the way that, hey, look, it's great that Sam Darnold's earned himself a lot of money, but JJ's going to be our guy. There is just a threshold here that we are getting extremely close to going over if we haven't already gone over. I mean, 12 wins. How many times have the Vikings had 12 wins, even in their recent history since like the 70s? It has not been that many. It's 1998. It's 2009. It's 2017. This is the same amount of wins that Brett Favre had when he was here in 2009, only in 2 fewer games. Like, that's how good they're playing. And if that's the level that you think can sustain, then you have to try to keep him here. And I don't see much that's unsustainable. You know, like they have metrics for looking at luck and did everything bounce your way. They've outscored their opponents by 117 points or something. It's not like Sam Darnold has just kind of thrown up random balloons into the air and they've fallen into people's hands. So anyway, but just to your point, along the way, they have had the development of JJ McCarthy in mind, and it may just be the case that he eventually still becomes the quarterback down the road. It's just that sometimes in the NFL, in fact, a lot of times, plans change. I mean, did Brock Purdy ever expect to be in a Super Bowl with the 49ers after they drafted Trey Lance? My gosh, this happens kind of all the time through NFL history, and I think the Vikings just might need to pivot from what their original plan was.
Well, 12-2 in the toughest division in football. The Seahawks, Packers, and Lions await. It's going to be an incredible run to the finish, and just imagine if that final game of the year between Detroit and Minnesota is for potentially the NFC North and the 1 seed in the NFC. Matt Coller's been our guest. Matt, I know there's a lot of Viking fans that are fired up right now. Let them know about Purple Insider and where they can get the constant content that you are cranking out around the Minnesota Vikings.
Oh, the machine is just pumping right now. There's smoke coming out of my house at this moment. It's Purple Insider everything. Purple Insider .football is the newsletter if you want to check that out. The YouTube page, Purple Insider, the podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. So Vikings fans, feel free to check that out because it's a good time. It's a good time for that.
Highly recommended and a very fun listen right now for Viking fans as well, just like watching these games. Matt, thanks so much for the time. Keep up the great work, and hopefully we can do this again heading into the playoffs at some point for the Viking fans north of the border here in Manitoba.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me on.
Thanks so much. Yeah, Skol Vikes. That was a heck of a win last night. I had an amazing time. If you haven't been to that stadium, by the way, it is worth the trip, even if you're not a Vike fan or whoever they're playing. They put on a great show, and man, this team is rolling. 3 games left: Seattle, the Packers, and then the final week of the season against the Detroit Lions, which potentially could be for the NFC North, and we'll see what happens with the Eagles. Eagles, a pretty soft schedule. I think there's a very good chance they'll get to 15-2, but we will see. We will get to the Coolbet lines. I'm putting together a wild WST parlay for tonight which we'll tell you about. A little bit more on the poker tourney and a big slate of games in the National Hockey League. But listen, before we do that, wanted to bring in a great friend of the program. Big news yesterday. After the last couple of years being hosted incredibly well by Southwood, the Manitoba Open on PGA Tour America as part of the Fortinet Cup has been announced as part of a 5-course rotation that's going to begin this year. We'll have Munzie on to talk about it. It is a great, great news for golf in the province to get 5 premier courses involved in hosting it. But incredibly happy and excited that our home course on Winnipeg Sports Talk, none other than Breezy Bend, will be hosting the event this year in late August. And to talk about it, let's welcome in our good friend Cory Johnson, the general manager of Breezy Bend. Cory, it is great to have you on Winnipeg Sports Talk. What's going on?
Hey, Hustler, great to see you, man. Last time I saw you was at the Breezy Bend member guest with Kevin Cheveldayoff.
That was
150 members.
You know what? That was such a great time. I appreciated you involving me in that. And it was, listen, it was a really, really cool event that you guys put on. And I think in a lot of ways, it's funny you bring that up because it just shows where so many of the sort of groundbreaking things that you're doing right now with that course and with the membership, but getting back into the tournament hosting thing, I think is that next level. And I mean, you can maybe speak to it. I mean, anyone that hasn't been to Breezy in the last 10, 15 years is going to see what ultimately amounts to almost a new golf course, but kind of been working up to be able to host an event like this. And now it's happening this year.
For sure. Yeah, we're very excited. We've spent $9 million now on improvements to the club over the last 10 years. And we're going to test the players with new greens on holes 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 15. New irrigation system, new drainage projects, a bunch of new tee boxes. So the course is in great shape. Our superintendent, Craig McLeod's done an amazing job. And we're looking forward to welcoming some of the best players in the world to Breezy Bend.
I think about last year's tournament at Southwood with John Kiefer and, of course, Neil Shipley, who we'd all just seen play in the Masters. And about 2 weeks after he was here in Winnipeg, became an official member of the PGA Tour, which really highlighted how amazing the talent is on this tour and how close so many of these guys are to becoming PGA Tour regulars. How big, when you look back at that tournament, how exciting was that for Breezy and your membership to be able to host an event that has such great talent for, I mean, not only Canadian golf, but also the opportunity for Winnipeggers, but in particular your members, the incredible junior program there, to get up and close with that level of golf at Breezy Bend?
Oh, yeah. No, we're thrilled for sure. These are the future stars of the PGA Tour. We know recently that Mackenzie Hughes played on this tour, Taylor Pendrith, Hayden Springer, you said, Jake Knapp played on this tour. Back when we held it in 91 to 93, I was caddying at the time in the event, 15 years old. But I mean, we had Mike Weir play here, Steve Stricker, Chris DeMarco played here, Todd Hamilton. These are all PGA Tour major winners. So it was, exciting then. And it's going to be even more exciting now to have them here.
No, we'll touch base with our pal Brian Munz, a little later on, but this is part of a 5-course rotation that was announced yesterday. Breezy's going to kick it off in 2025. We've got Elmhurst at 2026, Glendale in 2027, Pine Ridge in 28, and then back to Southwood, which has done a great job of hosting the last couple of years, in 2029. Cory, there's so much that goes into hosting this. I'd imagine it would be a lot to ask of your membership to do this on a regular basis, but it seems like this is just a perfect way to keep this event, to have it hosted in premier clubs here in Manitoba, and spread it around a little bit as well.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a huge undertaking. It requires 200 to 250 volunteers. So I think Southwood's done an amazing job for the last 5 years. Pine Ridge did a great job for the 10 years prior to that. But it becomes a big thing to look after, and it's a lot of work. You're giving up your golf course for a week. So I think Southwood decided they'd love to keep doing it, but would want to be on a 5-course rotation. And when we were approached we thought it was a great idea. It's something we probably couldn't do every year. So every 5 years is perfect. And so everyone here is really looking forward to it.
You know, when you do take on hosting an event like this, I mean, you mentioned you do lose the course for general play for a week or so. But just speaking with you and some people around the course, it sounds like from the board to the membership, this was something that was everyone is excited to have Breezy Bend kind of show off all the work that you and the membership have done over the last decade or so to Manitoba and also the stars of the PGA Tour Americas.
Yeah, we're thrilled to showcase the course. As I say, it is night and day from now to even 5-10 years ago. The best compliment we get is when somebody plays here who hasn't golfed here in the last 8 to 10 years. They think it's not even the same property. So excited to welcome these players. These golfers are going to go low. These are the best players in the world. So people have asked me, are you okay if these guys go out and shoot 30 under par over 4 rounds? And we say, yeah, for sure. People want to watch birdies. There's going to be some chances for eagles. I think it will play as a par 70. It's normally 72. We expect the course record to be in jeopardy. Currently, the course record is 62, shot by 3 players, including Garth Collings and Kelly Gibson back when the Manitoba Open was held here. So, we'll be on course record watch. Again, we couldn't be more excited to host this event.
Cory Johnson, the general manager of Breezy Bend, which was announced yesterday as part of a 5-course rotation hosting the Manitoba Open, and they're going to lead off in August. You mentioned how many volunteers are involved in this, Cory. I mean, now that it's been announced that Breezy, will be the host this year, I imagine hosting plans get going right away. I mean, how many people are already involved in putting this on or developing the group that it's going to be leading the way from a course perspective, not even into 2025 yet?
Right, yeah. No, meetings are already underway. There will be a call for volunteers very, very early in the new year. You'll be able to go to ManitobaOpen.com and we'll be looking for volunteers from the public. So hopefully people will want to volunteer and catch some of the best golf that you can find. We're looking for 250 volunteers total from van drivers to scorers to food and beverage personnel to parking lot attendants. So it's a huge undertaking and we're going to need a bunch of help.
You know, I have to ask you, I mean, anyone that's been around Breezy knows the job you do with the membership and your passion for the course, having basically grown up there into, an award-winning general manager, I will mention. But for a guy that's there all day, pretty much during the season, you get some downtime right now. It seems like, with this going on and everything around it, it's still busy at the Bend, even in the middle of winter.
Yeah, right now we're in the middle of corporate Christmas party season. We're doing a bunch of brunches. We have our Winter Golf League open, looked after by our head pro, Chris Enos. He's got the members playing on the simulators in the golf shop. And then we're open for regular dining Thursdays to Sundays. So January, February, March, Thursdays to Sundays, the public can come down and enjoy some of the great food here at the club.
Well, it certainly is. It certainly is amazing. Cannot wait for the spring. And I guess, get me a nice table for Winnipeg Sports Talk Thursday, Friday, heck, as much as you want us out there that weekend. It'll be a real fun time to, continue our partnership and get out there and do a few shows in the midst of the biggest golf event in Manitoba every year, back at the new look Breezy Bend for the first time in 1993. Cory, cannot wait for that. Cannot wait for the season. Heck, never mind August in the Manitoba Open just to get out there. This is the sort of time where we miss golf quite a bit, especially with that weather that came in with the Knights last week.
I think this is your year, Huss. I think this is the year you're going to knock 5 shots off your handicap and maybe break 80 this year, right?
Yeah, well, hell, you know what? You just did say the course record is in danger. Let's just put me in the mix at that. Maybe on 9. No, hey, listen, I cannot wait. I'm going to get out there with the fellas. And the one thing I'll say about Breezy, I mean, obviously everything you guys have done to the course is amazing. But and this is what's going to make it such an amazing Manitoba Open. The membership, the buy-in from the people at the Bend have made it, I mean, not only a great place to go and golf, but a spot that's supported so well for the social events. And I think that is going to make, because, you would, I'm sure, agree. I mean, these sort of events are really as good as the organizing committee, the volunteers, and the people that get behind it. And, from everything that you and the membership have done and the leadership there, I have no doubt that this is going to be as well supported a tournament as we've seen in a long, long time. And you can feel the excitement of people there to kind of show off the course to the rest of Manitoba this August.
For sure. We can't wait.
Thanks so much for doing this, Cory. Get a little bit of time away from the course because I think it's going to be a big one coming up this summer. Appreciate you and all your support over the years, and can't wait to get out there in August for the Manitoba Open at Breezy.
Thanks very much, Huss. We'll see you soon.
All right, great stuff with Cory, and congratulations to Breezy. I can tell you that tournament is going to be a massive success out of Breezy Bend, and we'll have to get Munzie on to talk about, the 5-course rotation, which includes Southdale, or Southwood, the Ridge, Pine Ridge, Glendale as well, and I believe Elmhurst. So anyways, great stuff for golf in Manitoba. Congratulations to Southwood, the team out there. I know Gutty and his gang looking forward to still being a part of it, but on a not annual basis right now. So great news for golf. And as I mentioned, we'll get Munzie on the next couple days to maybe jump on in around the holidays and discuss that as well. We're going to get to the Coolbet lines in just a minute, but Remo, you want to do your famous line?
Yeah, well, it's on my line, but we have a trade to announce. Not in the NHL, though. CFL offseason. It's crazy. We thought there would be movement in the quarterback carousel, and here it is. The Edmonton Elks have acquired the rights to Cody Fajardo from the Montreal Alouettes in exchange for McLeod Bethel-Thompson. McLeod Bethel-Thompson can become a free agent on February 11th, and Montreal moving on from Fajardo and going with Davis Alexander. And Justin Dunk tweeting out the details of Fajardo's contract. He has a $200,000 roster bonus due on January 15 as part of his currently scheduled $482,000 in compensation for 2025. And Dunk adds that salary will likely have to be renegotiated with the Elks. So, we thought they were going with Trey Ford as the starter. I don't know if Cody's coming in to be backup or doing the job.
I think that's the case. I don't think Trey Ford's. I mean, he was on our program. We asked him straight up. I mean, Trey, what are you looking for? And he said, "Listen, I'm looking for an opportunity to be the starting quarterback." And I don't think they get that deal done before he goes to free agency without telling. That is exactly why, and that's what they're paying him for.
No, well, I don't know. Like this is quite a fall from Fajardo. A year ago, he led the Alouettes to the Grey Cup in an amazing,
I don't want to talk about it.
Final drive. We watched it. Me before the Grey Cup I don't think Cody Fajardo could ever lead a team to a game-winning drive in the Grey Cup. Like if there's of all the quarterbacks, which you're not going to take Cody Fajardo to do it. But since then, he was on fire. He was so good. And he had an injury. I think he had to leave for some personal stuff and lost the job to Davis Alexander. And I think he was pretty good last year. Like I don't know if you're Trey Ford. I don't know what they told him. If they're going to be a competition, certainly interesting. We'll talk with Jeff Hamilton.
Cody's going to have to take a haircut. If he wants to be there, and he'll be the backup. I don't think there's any doubt. But the guy, as you just mentioned, the guy that will know and will have good insight is the Hammer, Jeff Hamilton. He'll join us tomorrow, and we're also going to get to the CFL report cards, which got released today, of players anonymously ranking their teams on a whole plethora of different topics, food, medical, training, travel, all of that. So that's going to be a fun CFL segment tomorrow with Hammer.
Yeah, and that thing, I'll give a teaser. The Bombers did not rate very high with travel. A lot of complaints about the team plane, Hustler, and they did get an A for equipment. I guess players are given whatever equipment they need some players, and other teams had to pay for their own equipment. So it's certainly interesting what the CFLPA has done. They've taken a page of the NFL's playbook where you rank all the teams and say, hey, this is where you make a public saying, hey, this is where some teams are good and some teams need improvement. And then teams can figure out, okay, this is where we're lacking or this is where we're good, because I don't know, I guess they're not all on the same page with how they run their own organizations. And the CFLPA thinks it'll improve things. And so Jeff will have more.
It'd be funny if you took, because I really expected the Bombers to be right at the top, and I think they were in a number of categories. But if you did that same poll with Bombers like 15 years ago, like in the Joe Mack era, and before they were flying private everywhere, it would be hilarious to hear some of the feedback from those guys. But anyways, we'll get into that off-season talk around the league and Hammer's thoughts on the Jets tomorrow as well. Let's get to the Coolbet lines tonight. By the way, just before we get to the NHL, I told you last week to buy low on the Vikings. Kevin O'Connell, if you go to the futures, KOC was plus 300 last week to be coach of the year. Dan Campbell was minus 160. We got in on KOC at plus 300. Well, looky here. 1 week later, Kevin O'Connell, minus 130 favorite, and Dan Campbell, plus 300. I mean, if you did want to hedge your bet and you think that it's going to be one of those two guys, and you got O'Connell last week at 3-1, you could get Dan Campbell at 3-1 today and guarantee yourself a profit. Just a little thought. I also was touting Sam Darnold as comeback player of the year last week. He was at 15-1. That's now down to 8-1. But Joe Burrow still the clear favorite. The Super Bowl odds out, and they've changed up a little bit. The Bills are the Super Bowl favorite right now, 4-1. The Eagles plus 450. The Lions plus 475. The Chiefs plus 600. And just on that, the Texans-Chiefs game in Arrowhead actually has the Texans favored by 1.5. Now, that to me says that Patrick Mahomes is not going to be playing. We don't have any clarity on that. But again, that's something that we'll be certainly monitoring heading into the weekend and a huge Saturday of games. The Texans and Chiefs at noon. The Ravens and Steelers at 3:30. And then, of course, a 6 o'clock puck drop for the WST holiday game with the Winnipeg Jets at 6 o'clock p.m. We added some more tickets. We were sold out yesterday. We've added some more tickets. If you want to join us in Section 316 for the game, winnipegjets.com/WST. Grab your tickets. It includes a beer. You'll get that off the Jets 360 app. And we look forward to seeing all of you that are joining us on Saturday night. Going to be an unbelievable sports weekend with the two games that day and then full slate of games. Although, frankly, the two best games might be the games on Saturday. As far as the hockey goes tonight, busy slate of games. Sabres are in Montreal. Buffalo, losers of 10 straight, favored against the Montreal Canadiens tonight, minus 130. The Kings, minus 141 in Pittsburgh. Tampa, minus 250 favored against the Blue Jackets. Canes, a big fave, minus 244 against the Islanders. The Rangers on the road in Nashville, plus 125 underdogs against the Preds. Devils, minus 182 in St. Louis against the Blues. The Caps coming off that 3-1 loss last night to Dallas, a minus 196 favorite in Chicago. Boston breaking their losing streak on Saturday night in Vancouver. They're in Calgary tonight, minus 135 for the Bruins. The Sens are looking good. They've won a few in a row. Minus 130 faves in Seattle. And then the late night game, the Winnipeg Jets. And this number's actually gone down a little bit. Jets were minus 227. They're now minus 208. On the money line, plus 128 if you want them to win by 2 on that puck line. Total is 6.5. Now, if you go to the exclusives, we've got, the WST parlay is up. We haven't seen the number yet, and it is plus 750. All right, so basically, we have the Jets to win, and they're a big favorite. It is Neil Pionk's 500th game. Pionk will get a point in front of his mom. And then we're going to lean in to line number 2. Cole Perfetti, who had 4 points the last time these teams met. Cole Perfetti to get a point. And what the heck, we're going to go with Chibrikov as well. So Perfetti and Chibrikov on line 2 and Neil Pionk each to get a point. Jets to win plus 750 in the exclusives for the Winnipeg Sports Talk parlay. Now, we did put 2 parlays together in the lock shop today. Our regular partner parlay, we've got the Kings to beat the Penguins, the Devils to beat the Blues, and the Bruins to beat the Flames. That's boosted to plus 415. And then the Slump Buster. The Slump Buster parlay. I think both Buffalo and the Rangers win tonight, Reem.
I actually do too.
That was plus 298. And of course, Evdog and Patty taking care of us in the lock shop. They boosted that to plus 350. So if you want to ride with me on Buffalo and the Rangers, plus 350. Kings, Devils, Bruins, that's plus 415. And then our WST for tonight's Jets game, Perfetti, Chibrikov, Pionk, all to get a point, and the Jets to win, plus 750. And again, if you popped in late, tonight is what, our 4th or 5th poker tourney, our monthly poker tourney with Coolbet, the Lock Shop, Winnipeg Sports Talk, Edmonton Sports Talk. If you go to coolbet.com, you'll see poker right at the top. Click on that, download the poker software, and then go into tournaments, search Lock Shop, and get on with us. There's bounties.
They got me on there.
My head. Perfect. Yes. Okay. Nielsen, Hustler, Iwanek, and Remis. You knock one of us out, you get $100 just for that. But play nice. Don't just come at us every single hand.
Yeah,
we got some work to do as well.
I gotta
9 o'clock it starts tonight.
I gotta relax us this time. It didn't go well for me. Before
I think we might be able to relax a little more because we'll be able to watch the game, which starts at 9:30. You know, we won't. You know, you'll play when we should be playing, not just screwing around for the sake of it. I'm looking forward to it. So if you haven't joined us before, let's do it tonight, 9 p.m. And again, good luck to everyone that had been playing beforehand tonight. So partner parlays and the WST parlay in the Coolbet exclusives at the left margin. And again, if you haven't played at Coolbet before, use the promo code WST for a 100% bonus, up to $200 for sports betting on your first deposit. It's going to do for us. Late one tonight, Reem.
Yeah, I'm going to try to get a nap in before the poker start. Got to make sure I'm at peak, physical, function for 9 p.m. for the poker. Then the Jets Sharks, that's at 9:30?
9:30. So I'm going to do the same thing. I've got some work stuff to do after the show. I'm going to shut it down for an hour or two. I'm going to go for a big pregame meal at Sal's. Shout out to Two for Tuesday, one of my favorites. Maybe a grilled cheese and a cheese nip or something like that.
Wow.
Considering a hot dog. We'll see. But yes, and then come back and be ready to roll for 9 for the Poker Open. And I would like to see, it would be great if one of the guys with a bounty on their head could win a bounty.
Oh.
Like one of us could take out Dusty or Iwanek, basically, is what I'm saying, because I'd like us to stay alive as long as possible.
I haven't been at a table. Maybe I have with you guys. I don't know, it hasn't worked out. I try and I see you guys there, want to, take an opportunity, but sometimes it's not there. So I am excited for tonight. I need redemption. Did not have a good showing. I was not there, 100%. So I'm feeling better today. I've read up, exercised my poker brain, ready to give her.
All right. Well, folks, we'll see you there. 9 p.m. it starts. Coolbet.com, poker, lock shop tournament. And other than that, hopefully Jets can get a win. We'll have some good vibes in the show tomorrow. Ken will be on the program tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be so much fun. Ken, Hammer, and Feinberg.
Mm-hmm.
3 WST All-Stars going back to back to back. And then 9 p.m. puck drop in Anaheim, where we expect that Eric Comrie will be getting back into the net, trying to get back in the winning lane.
Isn't he from that area as well, Eric Comrie? Didn't he grow up around there? So that's
absolutely.
Nice. Hey, just we'll do more CFL reaction with Jeff, but Milt Stiegel tweeting out us, the Elks trading for Cody Fajardo will go down as the most important signing this offseason. So I don't think he's going to say that if he's not going to start. And if you're Trey
I do not think that he's starting.
Well, why would... We'll have to see tomorrow. But
put a marker on it, clip it. Remember, today is the day, the Bethel MBT for Cody Fajardo trade. Week 1, under center, Trey Ford, your starting quarterback for the Edmonton Elks. That is my take. Feel free to get at me. If I'm wrong after the fact, I don't think I will be. That's going to do it for us today. Great stuff. We appreciate Ted Ramey jumping on from San Jose. Mike McIntyre from the Winnipeg Free Press. Matt Coller. Check out Purple Insider, all you Viking fans. Great stuff on the YouTube channel and the podcast. And again, congratulations and thanks to Cory Johnson from Breezy Bend. Cannot wait for that Manitoba Open. We will be doing shows from Breezy for the event when it comes next August. Rest up, 9 p.m. poker, 9:30 hockey game tonight. Gotta love it. We'll see you all tomorrow, 1 o'clock p.m. Thanks again to all of our sponsors. Try and support them now, especially heading into the holidays if you can for all your Christmas shopping. And good luck tonight on the felt. We'll see you tomorrow, 1 p.m. right here on WST.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.